criminals. There was.
You're not the first headhunter to mistake me for easy quarry.
Oh, I'll have your head. But I am no headhunter. You'll pay in blood for what you did in Balmamusa.
You were in Balmamusa. Please, you must hear me.
We are past talk. For Balmamusa! For my brother!
As a journal found on his computer, and so it sort of kind of gave me a little inside. So I don't like to do a playbook for criminals, but I'll tell you right now, don't write things down. There was a big fad about people, like, remember kids going around shooting people with paintballs and filming it? Mm-hmm. I don't know why you would do that. Why would you videotape yourself committing crime and then publish it? Like, if there's one thing I've taught my children, don't record yourself doing bad things. It never goes well. So,
and you actually give advice on the other end of logs being very useful for the defense perspective. For, you know, information is useful for being able to figure out what the attacks were all about.
Logs are the only reason I found Hector Monsegur. I mean, the one time his VPN dropped during a Fox hack, and he says it wasn't even hacking. He just was sent a link and he clicked on it. And in 10 million lines of logs, there was one IP address that stuck out.
This is fascinating. We'll explore several angles of that. So, what was the process of bringing down Russ and the Silk Road?
All right, so that's a long story. You want the whole thing, or you want to break it up?
Let's start at the beginning.
Once we had the information of the chat logs and all that from the server, we found...
What's the server? What's the chat log?
So the Dot Onion was running the website, the Silk Road, was running on a server in Iceland.
How did you figure that out? That was one of the claims that the NSA...
Yeah, that's the one that we said that yeah, I wouldn't tell you if it was. It's on the internet. I mean, the internet has their conspiracy theories and all that, so...
But you figure out, that's the part of the thing you do. It's puzzle pieces, and you have to put them together and look for different pieces of information and figure out, okay, so you figure out the server is in Iceland.
We get a copy of it, and so we start getting clues off of that.
Wait, the physical copy of the server?
Yeah, we flew. You fly over there, so you go. If you've been to Iceland, if you've never been, you should definitely go to Iceland.
Is it beautiful?
I love it. I love it. It was what. So I'll tell you this. So sorry, tangents. Right? You know,
I love this. Yeah.
So I went to Iceland.
We were there. I'll not deny it. But we did all we could to stop the slaughter.
Lies. I only pray you sold your loyalty for a worthy sum.
For the anonymous case, then I went to Iceland for the Silk Road case, and I was like, oh shit, all cybercrime goes through Iceland. It was just my sort of thing. And I was over there for like the third time, and I said, if I ever can bring my family here. Like, so there's a place called Thingavar, and I'm sure I'm fucking up the name. The Icelandics are pissed right now. But it's where the North American continental plate and the European continental plate are pulling apart, and it's being filled in with volcanic material in the middle. And it's so cool. Like, I was like, one day I'll be able to afford to bring my family here. And once I left,
just like the humbling and the beauty of nature,
just everything, man. It was a different world. It was insane how great Iceland is. And so we went back and we rented a van and we took friends and we drove around the entire country. Absolutely, like a beautiful place. Like Reykjavik's nice, but get out of Reykjavik as quick as you can and see the countryside.
How is this place even real?
Well, it's so new. I mean, that's so our rivers have been going through here for millions of years and flattened everything out and all that. These are new. This is new land being carved by these rivers. You can walk behind a waterfall in one place. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been.
You understand why this is a place where a lot of hacking is being done?
Because the energy is free and it's cool. So you have a lot of servers going on there. Server farms, the energy has come up out of the ground, geothermal, and then it keeps all the servers nice and cool. So why not keep your computers there at a cheap rate?
I'll definitely visit for several reasons, including to talk to AV Unit.
Yeah, he'll put you there.
Well, the servers are there, but they don't probably live there. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, the Pacific, the PST, the time zones. There's so many fascinating things to explore here.
Well,
so you got.
Sorry, to add to that, the European internet cable goes through there, so across to Greenland and down through Canada and all that. So they have backbone access with cheap energy and free cold weather.
And beautiful.
Oh, and beautiful, yes.
So chat logs on that server. What was in the chat logs?
Everything. He kept them all. That's another issue. If you're running a criminal enterprise, please don't keep all. Again, I'm not making a guidebook of how to commit the perfect crime, but every chat he ever had, and everyone's chat, it was like going into Facebook of criminal activity.
Yeah, I'm just looking at texts with Elon Musk being part of the conversations. I don't know if you're familiar, but they've been made public for the court case he's going through. Was going through with Twitter.
I don't know where it is.
But it made me realize that, okay. Generally, that's my philosophy on life, is like anything I text or email or say publicly or privately, I should be proud of. So I try to kind of do that, because you say don't keep chat logs, but it's very difficult to erase chat logs from this world. Like, I guess if you're a criminal, that should be you have to be exceptionally competent at that kind of thing. To erase your footprints is very, very difficult.
Can't make one mistake. All it takes is one mistake of keeping it. But yeah, I mean, not only do you have to be whatever you put in a chat log or whatever you put in an email, it has to hold up, and you have to stand behind it publicly when it comes out. But if it comes out 10 years from now, you have to stand behind it. I mean, we're seeing that now in today's society.
Yeah, but that's a responsibility you have to take really, really seriously. If I was a parent and advising teens, you kind of have to teach them that. I know there's a sense no, we'll become more accustomed to that kind of thing, but in reality, no. I think in the future we'll still be held responsible for the weird shit we do.
Yeah, a friend of mine, his daughter got kicked out of college because of something she posted in high school, and the shittiest thing for him, but great for my kids. Great lesson. Look over there, and you don't want that to happen to you.
Yeah. Okay. So in the chat logs was useful information, like breadcrumbs of information that you can then pull at.
Yeah, great evidence and stuff. I mean, obviously.
Evidence too.
Yeah, a lot of evidence. I mean, here's a sale of this much heroin because. Ross ended up getting charged with czar status on certain things, and it's a certain weight in each type of drug, and that you had I think it's 4 or 5 employees of your empire, and that you made more than $10 million, and so it's just like what the narco traffickers get charged with, or anybody out of Colombia, so.
And that was primarily what he was charged with when he was arrested, is the drug.
Yeah, and he got charged with some of the hacking tools too.
Okay. Because he's in prison, for
2 life sentences plus 40 years.
And no possibility of parole?
In the federal system, there's no possibility of parole when you have life. The only way you get out is if the president pardons you.
There's always a chance.
There is. I think it was close. I heard rumors it was close.
Right. So it depends. It's fascinating, but given the ideological ideas that he represented and espoused, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked before, who does he get out of prison first, or does Snowden come back into America? And I don't know. I have no idea.
Snowden just became a Russian citizen.
I saw that, and I've heard a lot of good weird theories about that one.
Well, actually, on another tangent, let me ask you: do you think Snowden is a good or a bad person?
A bad person.
Can you make the case that he's a bad person?
there's ways of being a whistleblower, and there's rules set up on how to do that. He didn't follow those rules. I mean, they I'm red, white, and blue, so I'm pretty,
So you think his actions were anti-American?
I think the results of his actions were anti-American. I don't know if his actions were anti-American.
Do you think he could have anticipated the negative consequences of his action?
Yes.
Should we judge him by the consequences or the ideals of the intent of his actions?
I think we all get to judge him based on our own beliefs, but I believe what he did was wrong.
Can you steelman the case that he is actually a good person and good for this country, for the United States of America, as a flag bearer for the whistleblowers, the check on the power of government?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not big government type guy, so even that sounds weird coming from a government guy for so many years, but there's rules in place for a reason. I mean, he put some of our best capabilities, he made them publicly available. It really kind of set us back in and this isn't my world at all, but the offensive side of cybersecurity.
Right, so he revealed stuff that he didn't need to reveal in order to make the point.
Correct.
So if you can imagine a world where he leaked stuff that revealed the mass surveillance efforts and not reveal other stuff. Like, it's the mass surveillance. I mean, that's the thing that, of course, there's in the interpretation of that, there's fear mongering, but at the core, that was a real shock to people that it's possible for a government to collect data at scale.
It's surprising to me that people are that shocked by it.
Well, there's conspiracies, and then there's like actual evidence that is happening. I mean, it's a reality. There's a lot of reality that people ignore, but when it hits you in the face, you realize, holy shit, we're living in a new world. This is the new reality, and we have to deal with that reality. Just like you work in cybersecurity, I think it really hasn't hit most people how fucked we all are in terms of cybersecurity. Okay, let me rephrase that. How many dangers there are in a digital world, how much under attack we all are, and how more intense the attacks are getting, and how difficult the defense is, and how important it is, and how much we should value it, and all the different things we should do at the small and large scale to defend. Like, most people really haven't woken up. They think about privacy from tech companies. They don't think about attacks, cyber attacks.
People don't think they're a target, and that message definitely has to get out there. I mean, if you have a voice, you're a target. If the place you work, you might be a target. So your husband might work at some place. And because now people are working from home, so they're going to target you to get access to his network in order to get in.
Well, in that same way, the idea that the U.S. government or any government could be doing mass surveillance on its citizens is one that was a wake-up call, because you could imagine the ways in which that could be like you could abuse the power of that to control the citizenry for political reasons and purposes.
Absolutely. You could abuse it. I think during the part of the Snowden leak, saw that 2 NSA guys were monitoring like their girlfriends. And there's rules in place for that. Those people should be punished for abusing that. But how else are we going to hear about, terrorists that are in the country talking about birthday cakes? And that was a case where that was the trip word that we're going to go bomb New York City's subway.
Yeah, it's complicated, but it just feels like there should be some balance of transparency. There should be a check on that power. Because like in the name of the war on terror, you can sort of sacrifice. There is a trade-off between security and freedom, but it just feels like there's a giant slippery slope on the sacrificing of freedom in the name of security.
I hear you, and we live in a world where, I live in a world where I had to tell you exactly how, when I arrested someone, I had to write a 50-page document of how I arrested you, and all the probable cause I have against you and all that. Well, bad guys are reading that. They're reading how I caught you, and they're changing their way they're doing things. They're changing their MO. They're doing it to be more secure. If we tell people how we're monitoring, what we're surveilling, we're going to lose that. I mean, the terrorists are just going to go a different way. And I'm not trying to, again, I'm not big government. I'm not trying to say that, it's cool that we're monitoring, the U.S. government's monitoring everything. Big tech's monitoring everything. They're just monetizing it versus possibly using it against you.
But there is a balance. And those 50 pages, they have a lot of value. They make your job harder, but they prevent you from abusing the power of the job.
Yeah.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
That's a tricky balance. So the chat logs in Iceland gave you evidence of the heroin and all the large-scale czar-level drug trading. What else did it give you in terms of how to catch?
It gave us infrastructure. So the Onion name was actually running on a server in France. So if you and it only communicated through a back channel, a VPN, to connect to the Iceland server. There was a Bitcoin kind of vault server that was also in Iceland. And I think that was so that the admins couldn't get into the Bitcoins, the other admins that were hired to work on the site. So you could get into the site, but you couldn't touch the money. Only Ross had access to that. And then, another big mistake on Ross's part is he had the backups for everything at a data center in Philadelphia. Don't put your infrastructure in the United States. I mean, again, let's not make a playbook, but,
Well, I think these are low-hanging fruit that people of competence would know already.
I agree.
But it's interesting that he wasn't competent enough so he was incompetent in certain ways.
Yeah, I don't think he was a mastermind of setting up an infrastructure that would protect his online business, because keeping chat logs, keeping a diary, putting infrastructure where it shouldn't be, bad decisions.
How did you figure out that he's in San Francisco?
So we had that part with Jared, that he was on the West Coast, and then
Who again is Jared?
Jared Dagan was a partner he was a DHS agent, worked for HSI, Homeland Security Investigations in Chicago. He started his Silk Road investigation because he was working at O'Hare and a weird package came in. Come to find out, he traced it back to Silk Road. So he started working a Silk Road investigation long before I started my case. And he made his way up undercover all the way to be an admin on Silk Road. So he was talking to Ross on a Jabber server, the private Jabber server, private chat communication server, and we noticed that Ross's time zone on that Jabber server was set to the West Coast. So we had Pacific time on there, so we had a...
But they cut him down just the same.
A region, 1/24 of the world was covered of where we thought we might be.
And from there, how do you get to San Francisco?
There was another guy, an IRS agent, that was part of the team, and he used a powerful tool to find his clue. He used the world of Google. He simply just went back and Googled around for Silk Road at the time it was coming up, and found some posts on some help forums that this guy was starting an Onion website and wanted some cryptocurrency help. And if you could help him, please reach out to ross.albrick@gmail.com. In my world, that's a clue. So.
Okay, so that's as simple as that.
Yeah, and the name he used on that post was Frosty.
Yeah, so you had to connect Frosty and other uses in Frosty, and here's a Gmail, and the Gmail has the name.
The Gmail posted that I need help under the name Frosty on this forum.
So what's the connection of Frosty elsewhere?
The person logging into the Philadelphia backup server, the name of the computer was Frosty. Another clue in my world.
And that's it. The name is there, the connection to the Philadelphia server and then to Iceland is there. And so the rest is small details in terms of, or is there interesting details?
No, I mean, there's some electronic surveillance that find Ross Ulbricht living in a house, and is there, is a computer at his house attaching to, does it have Tor traffic at the same time the DPR is on? Another big clue. Matching up time frames.
Again, just putting your email out there, putting your name out there like that, like what I see from that, just at the scale of that market, what it just makes me wonder how many criminals are out there that are not making these low-hanging fruit mistakes and are still successfully operating. To me, it seems like you could be a criminal. It's much easier to be a criminal on the internet. What else to you is interesting to understand about that case of Russ and
200.
and Silk Road, and just the history of it from your own relationship with it, from a cybersecurity perspective, from an ethical perspective, all that kind of stuff? Like, when you look back, what's interesting to you about that case?
I think my views on the case have changed over time. I mean, it was my job back then. So I just looked at it as I'm going after this. I sort of made a name for myself in the Bureau for...
All Derrim has told you is true. We were conspired against.
Abuna Donalto? How can this be? Leonard said that you died in Balmamusa.
Leonard told you this? I did not think him capable of such duplicity. Aracel, as I am living proof, Leonard's words are false. A cousin, a playwright. He knows the truth, yet writes for us a damning fiction.
What do you mean to say? That Leonard has misled me on purpose? Nay, this is no fiction. I know the horrors I saw in Balmamusa. I will never forget.
No, Aracel. You are captive to your own rage. It veils you from the truth. Oh, great Father Philaha, raise this child's heart from the dark recesses of hate.
for the anonymous case, and then this one was just, I mean, this was a bigger deal. I mean, they flew me down to DC to meet with the director about this case. The president of the United States was going to announce this case, the arrest. Unfortunately, the government shut down 2 days before. So it was just us. And that's really the only reason I had any publicity out of it, is because the government shut down, and the only thing that went public was that affidavit with my signature at the end. Otherwise, it would have just been the attorney general and the president announcing the rest of this big thing, and you wouldn't have seen me.
Did you understand that this was a big case?
Yeah, I knew at the moment. Yeah, I knew at the time.
Was it because of the scale of it or what it stood for?
I just knew that the public was going to react in a big way. Like,
Pakistan had no hand in it, but the Duke wished it to appear so. Believe what you will, I speak the truth.
Have you no shame?
She has no ear to listen. If words will not win us free, our steel must.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
media was. Now, did I think that it was going to be on the front page of every newspaper the day after the arrest? No, but I could sense it. Like, I went like
Hell yeah.
3 or 4 days without sleep. When I was out in San Francisco to arrest Ross, I had sent 3 guys to Iceland to. So it was a 3-prong approach for the takedown. It was get Ross, get the Bitcoins, and seize the site. Like, we didn't want someone else taking control of the site, and we wanted that big splash of that banner. Like, look, the government found this site. Like, you might not want to think about doing this again. So,
And you were able to pull off all 3?
maybe that's my superpower. I'm really good about putting smarter people on than I am together and on the right things. You know, I've
That's
done
the only way to do it.
in the business I formed. That's what I did. I hired only smarter people than me, and I'm not that smart, but smart enough to know who the smart people are.
The team was able to do all 3.
Yeah, we were able to get all 3 done. And the one of the main guys I sent to Iceland, man, he was so smart. Like, I sent another guy from the FBI to France to get that part, and he couldn't do it, so the guy in Iceland did it from
We're
from
fucking
Iceland.
annihilated.
They had to
this
pull some
fool.
stuff out of memory on a computer. It's live process stuff. I'm sure you've done that before, but
I'm sure you did. Look what you're doing. This is like a multi-layer interrogation going on. Was there a concern that somebody else would step in and control the site?
absolutely, we didn't have insight on who exactly had control.
So it turns out that Russ had like dictatorial control. So it wasn't easy to delegate to somebody else.
He hadn't. I think he had some sort of ideas. I mean, his diary talked about
There we
walking
go.
away and giving it to somebody else, but he didn't. He couldn't give up that control to anybody, apparently.
Which makes you think that power corrupts and his ideals were not as strong as he espoused about. Because if it was about the freedom of being able to buy drugs, if you want to, then he surely should have found ways to delegate that power.
Well, he changed over time. You could see it in his writings that he changed. Like, so people will argue back and forth that there was never murders on Silk Road. When we were doing the investigation, to us there were 6 murders. So there was, the way we saw him at the time was Ross ordered people to be murdered. People stole from him and all that. It was sort of an evolution from, oh man, I can't deal with this, I can't do it, it's too much, to the last one was like, the guy said, well, he's got 3 roommates. It's like, oh, we'll kill them too.
Was that ever proven in court?
No,
Just
and it's
part of
Though the knowledge that my brother goes unavenged pains me more than any wound. It is done. Now kill me. Kill as you did in Balma Musa.
I will not. You are not my foe. If you have lost the will to fight, leave. I will not give chase.
If I leave here now, I will only return to claim your life.
Then know I am bound for Tynemouth. If you would hunt me there.
You're going to regret this.
Regret? There is already too much for me to regret.
Ooh, Sybil staff. Oh wait, I think I already have one of those. Damn. Avoidance charm? Those experience charms are the shit. Oh yeah, we should be past. Oh, we're still at level cap? No way.
murder.
The murders never went forward because there was some problems in that case. There was a separate case in Baltimore that they had been working on for a lot longer. And so, during the investigation,
our
that
whole
caused a
map
bunch of problems
changed.
because now we have multiple federal agencies a case against the same thing.
How do you decide not
were we
to
at
push forward
previously?
the murder investigations?
So there was a deconfliction meeting that happened in DC.
I think we were here.
I didn't happen to go to that meeting,
We're
but
here?
Jared went. This is before I ever knew Jared, and we have televisions where we can just sit in a room and sit in on the meeting, but it's all secure network and all that, so we can talk openly about secure things. And we sat in on the meeting, and people just kept saying the term sweat equity. I've got sweat equity, meaning that they had worked on the case for so long that they deserve to take them down.
Be right back.
And by this time, no one knew about us, but we told them at the meeting that we had found the server and we have a copy of it and we have the infrastructure. And these guys had just had communications undercovers. They didn't really know what was going on. And this wasn't my first deconfliction meeting. We had a huge deconfliction meeting during the anonymous case.
What's the deconfliction meeting?
Agents within your agency or other federal agencies have an open investigation that if you expose your case or took down your case would hurt their case or the other way.
So you kind of have it's like the rival gangs meet at the table in a smoke-filled room.
Kitty.
And then
Less bullets at the end, but yes.
Oh boy, with the sweat equity.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's
I hate
careers at stake, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You hate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, why is that a stake? Just because you've worked on it long enough, longer than I have, that means you did better?
Yeah.
That's insane to me. That's rewarding bad behavior.
And so that one of the part of the sweat equity discussion was about murder, and this was here's a chance to actually bust them, given the data you have from Iceland and all that kind of stuff. So why
Well, they wanted us just to turn the data over to them.
to them?
Yeah.
So
like,
that
thanks for getting us this far. Here it is. I mean, it came to the point where they sent us they had a picture of what they thought Ross was, and it was an internet meme. It really was a meme. It was a photo that we could look up. Like it was insane.
All right, so there's different degrees of competence all across the world between different people. Yes.
Huh. Okay.
Okay. Does part of you regret because you pushed forward the heroin and the drug trade, you never got to the murder discussion?
I mean, the only regret is that the internet doesn't seem to understand. Like they just kind of blow that part off. That he literally paid people to have people murdered. It didn't result in a murder, and I thank God no one resulted in a murder.
But that's where his mind was.
His mind and where he wrote in his diary was that I had people killed, and here's the money. He paid it. He paid a large amount of bitcoins for that murder.
So
those
he
murders.
didn't just even think about it. He actually took action, but the murders never happened. He took action by paying the money.
Correct, and the people came back with results. He thought they were murdered.
That said, can you understand and steel me on the case for the drug trade on Silk Road? Like can you make the case that it's a net positive for society?
So there was a time period of when we found out the infrastructure and when we built the case against Ross. I don't remember exactly. 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, I don't know, somewhere in there. But then at Ross's sentencing, there was a father that stood up and talked about his son dying. And I went back and kind of did the math, and it was between those time periods of when we knew.
Here you are.
I just realized my fan is not on.
Structure, and when we built the case against Ross.
Not every day you chance on a mark with 30,000 Goth.
There are your headhunters, Denham. I know them by the dull light in their eyes.
Oh, a comely maid with a curdled tongue. I approve. Don't worry, little lass. You'll be spared. You alone. A man grows lonely so far from home, hey? Well, let's begin, shall we? Look sharp, boys. Let one go. It'll mean your purse.
He's level 12. And we're capped at level 11? It's a little fucked, right? Oh, that bitch can go. Oh, okay. Okay. I see how we're doing this.
I don't remember exactly. 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, I don't know, somewhere in there. But then at Ross's sentencing, there was a father that stood up and talked about his son dying. And I went back and kind of did the math, and it was between those time periods of when we knew we could shut it down. We could have pulled the plug on the server and gone. And when Ross was arrested, his son died from buying drugs on Silk Road. And I still think about that father a lot.
But if you look at the scale at the war on drugs, let's just even outside of Silk Road, do you think the war on drugs by the United States has alleviated more suffering or caused more suffering in the world?
That might be above my pay scale. I mean, I understand the other side of the argument. I mean, people said that I don't have to go down to the corner to buy drugs. I'm not going to get shot on the corner buying drugs or something. I can just have them sent to my house. People are going to do drugs anyways. I understand that argument.
Oh, wait a second.
From my personal standpoint, if I made it more difficult for my children to get drugs, then I'm satisfied.
So your personal philosophy is that if we legalize all drugs, including heroin and cocaine, that would not make for a better world?
Personally, I don't believe
Do you think
legalizing all drugs would make for a better world.
Can you imagine that it would? Do you understand that argument?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as I've gotten older, I like to see both sides of an argument. And when I can't see the other side, that's when I really like to dive into it. And I can see the other side. I can see why people would say that. But I don't want to view raise children in a world where drugs are just free for use.
Well, and then the other side of it is with Silk Road. Did taking down Silk Road, did that increase or decrease the number of drug trading criminals in the world? It's unclear.
Online, I think it increased. I think, that's one of the things I think about a lot with Silk Road was that no one really knew. I mean, there was, thousands of users. But then after that, it was on the front page of the paper, and there was millions of people that knew about Tor and Onion sites. It was an advertisement. I would have thought crypto was going to crash right after that. What people now see that bad people are doing bad things with crypto. That'll crash. Well, I'm obviously wrong on that one. And I thought, Ross was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. No one's going to start up these. Dark markets exploded after that. Some of them started as, opportunistic. I'm going to, take those escrow accounts and I'm going to steal all the money that came in. They were for that. But, but there were a lot of dark markets that popped up after that. Now we put the playbook out there.
Yeah. But, and also there's a case for, do you ever think about not taking down, if you've not taken down Silk Road, you could use it because it's a market. It itself is not necessarily the primary criminal organization. It's a market for criminals. So it could be used to track down criminals in the physical world. So if you don't take it down, given that it was, how centralized it was, it could be used as a place to find criminals, right? As opposed
the
to
dealers, the drug dealers, taking down the drug dealers?
Yeah. So if you have the cartels get involved, you go after the dealers.
It would have been very difficult
because of Tor and all.
Because of all the protections, the anonymity. Decloaking all that would have been drastically more difficult. And a lot of people in upper management of the FBI didn't have the appetite of running something like that. That would have been the FBI running a drug market. How many fathers would have to come in and said, my kid bought while the FBI was running a drug site, my kid died. So I didn't know of anybody in the FBI management that would have the appetite to let us run what was happening on Silk Road. Because remember at that time, we're still believing 6 people are dead. We're still investigating, where are all these bodies? That's pretty much why we took down Ross when we did. I mean, we had to jump on it fast.
What else can you say about this complicated world that has grown of the dark web?
I don't understand it. I it would have been something for me. I thought it was going to collapse, but I mean, it's just gotten bigger in what's going out there. Now, I'm really surprised in that it hasn't grown into other networks or people haven't developed other networks. But
you mean like instead of Tor?
Yeah, Tor's still the main one out there. I mean, there's a few others, and I'm not going to put an advertisement out for them. But I thought that market would have grown.
Yeah, my sense was when I interacted with Tor, it was that there's huge usability issues, but that's for like legal activity.
Yeah,
because like if you care about privacy, it's just not as good of a browser. Like it's to look at stuff.
No, it's way too slow. It's way too slow. But I mean, you can't even I know some people would use it to view movies like Netflix. You can only view certain movies in certain countries. You can use it for that, but it's too slow even for that. So,
were you ever able to hold in your mind the landscape of the dark web, like what's going on out there? It's just, to me as a human being, it's just difficult to understand the digital world, like these anonymous usernames, like doing anonymous activity. It's hard to what am I trying to say? It's hard to visualize it in the way I can visualize, like I've been reading a lot about Hitler. I can visualize meetings between people, military strategy, deciding on certain evil atrocities, all that kind of stuff. I can visualize the people, there's agreements, handshakes, stuff signed, groups built. Like in the digital space, like with bots, with anonymity, any one human can be multiple people. It's just...
Yeah, it's all lies. It's all lies.
Like, yeah, it feels like I can't trust anything.
No, you can't. You honestly can't. And you can talk to 2 different people and it's the same person. Like there's so many different, Hector had so many different identities online. Of things the lies to each other. I mean, he lied to people inside his group just to use another name to spy on, make sure what they, we're talking shit behind his back or weren't doing anything. It's all lies, and people that can keep all those lies straight, it's unbelievable to me.
Ross Ulbricht represents the very early days of that. That's why the competence wasn't there. Just imagine how good the people are now. The kids that grow up
Oh, they've learned from his mistakes.
Just the extreme competence. You just see how good people are at video games, like the level of play in terms of video games. Like I used to think I sucked. And now I'm not even in the like consideration of calling myself shitty at video games. I'm like non-existent. I'm like the mold.
Yeah, I stopped playing because it's so embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's like wrestling with your kid and he finally beats you. He's like, well, fuck that. I'm not wrestling with my kid ever again.
And in some sense, hacking at its best and its worst is a kind of game. And you can get exceptionally good at that kind of game.
And you get the accolations of it. I mean, there's power that comes along if you have success. Look at the kid that was hacking into Uber and Rockstar Games. He put it out there that he was doing it. I mean, he used the name, whatever hacked into Uber was his screen name. He was very proud of it. I mean, building evidence against himself, but he wanted that slap on the back. Like, look at what a great hacker you are.
Yeah. What do you think is in the mind of that guy? What do you think is in the mind of Russ? Do you think they see themselves as good people?
Bitch.
Do you think they acknowledge the bad they're doing out into the world?
So that Uber hacker, I think that's just youth, and not realizing what consequences are based on his actions. Ross was a little bit older. I think Ross truly is a libertarian. He truly had his beliefs that he could provide the gateway for other people to live that libertarian lifestyle, is put in their body what they want. I don't think that was a front or a lie.
What's the difference between DPR and Ross? You said, like, I have never met Ross until I have only had those two days of worth of interaction.
Yeah,
it's just interesting, given how long you've chased him, and then having met him. What was the difference to you as a human being?
He was a human being. He was an actual person. He was nervous when we arrested him. So one of the things that I learned through my law enforcement career is, if I'm going to be the case agent, I'm going to be the one in charge of dealing with this person, I'm not putting handcuffs on him. Somebody else is going to do that. Like, I'm going to be there to help him. I'm your conduit to help. And so, right after someone's arrested, you obviously pat them down for weapons to make sure for everybody's safety. But then I just put my hand on their chest. Just feel their heart, feel their breathing. I'm sure it's the scariest day, but then to have that human contact kind of settles people down, and you kind of let's start thinking about this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be open and honest with you. There's a lot of cops out there, and federal agents, cops, that just go to the hard ass tactic. You don't get very far with that. You don't get very far being a mean asshole to somebody. Be compassionate, be human, and it's going to go a lot further.
So given everything he's done, you're still able to have compassion for him?
Yeah. We took him to the jail, and it was after hours, so he didn't get to see a judge that day. So we stuck him in the San Francisco jail. I hadn't slept for about 4 days because I was dealing with people in Iceland, bosses in DC, bosses in New York. So I was in San Francisco, so time frame, like the Iceland people were calling me when I was supposed to be sleeping. It was insane. But I still went out that night while Ross sat in jail and bought him breakfast. I said, what do you want for breakfast? I'll have a nice breakfast for you, because we picked him up in the morning and took him over to the FBI to do the FBI booking, the fingerprints and all that. And I got him breakfast. I mean, and you don't get paid back for that sort of thing. I'm not looking, but out of my own.
Did he make special requests for breakfast?
Yeah, he asked for certain things.
What can you mention? Or is that top secret FBI?
Not top secret. I think he wanted some granola bars,
Yeah.
But I mean, he'd already had lawyered up, so which is his right. He can do that. So I knew we were going to work together, like I did with Hector. But I mean, this was
most of the
last day.
Most of the conversations have to be done with lawyers.
From that point on, I can't question him when he asked for a lawyer, or if I did, it couldn't be used against him. So we just had conversation where I talked to him. He could say things to me, but then I would remind him that he asked for a lawyer, and he'd have to waive that and all that. But we didn't talk about his case so much. We just talked about like human beings.
Did he, with his eyes, with his words, reveal any kind of regret, or did you see a human being changing, understanding something about themselves in the process of being caught?
No, I don't think that. I mean, he did offer me $20 million to let him go when we were driving to the jail.
Oh no!
And I asked him what we were gonna do with the agent that sat in the front seat.
The money really broke him, huh?
I think so.
Well,
I think
bitch, heal
he
yourself.
kind of got caught up in how much money it was, and how, you know, when crypto started, it was pennies, and by the time he got arrested, it was $120, and you know, 177,000 bitcoins. Even today, you know, that's a lot of bitcoins.
So you really could have been, if you continued, to be one of the richest people in the world.
I possibly could have been if I took that 20 million then. I could have been living. We could have this conversation in Venezuela.
In a castle, in a palace.
Yeah, until it runs out, and then the government storms the castle.
Yeah. Have you talked to Russ since?
No.
All right,
No.
come on.
I'd be open to it. I don't think he probably wants to hear from me.
And do you know in which prison he is?
I think he's somewhere out in Arizona. I know he was in the one next to Supermax for a little while, like the high security one that's like shares the fence with Supermax, but I don't think he's there anymore. I think he's out in Arizona. I haven't seen in a while.
I wonder if you can do interviews in prison. That'd be nice.
Some people are allowed to, so I've not seen an interview with him. I know people have wanted to interview him about books and that sort of thing.
Right, because the story really blew up. Did it surprise you how much the story and many elements of it blew up? Movies?
It did surprise me. Like my wife's uncle, who I've been married to my wife for 22 years now. I don't think he knew my name, and he was excited about that. He reached out when Silk Road came out, so he you know, that was surprising to see.
Did you think the movie was on the topic was good?
I didn't have anything to do with that movie. I've watched it once. It was kind of cool that Jimmy Simpson, you know, was my name in the movie. But outside of that, I thought it sort of missed the mark on some things.
When Hollywood, I don't think they understand
Fuck.
what's interesting about these kinds of stories. And there's a lot of things that are interesting, and they missed all of them. So, for example, I recently talked to John Carmack,
All right.
who's a world-class developer and so on. So Hollywood would think that the interesting thing about John Carmack is some kind of like shitty, like a parody of a hacker or something like that. They would show like really crappy, like emulation of some kind of Linux terminal thing.
Yeah.
The reality is, like, the technical details for 5 hours with him, for 10 hours with him, is what people actually want to see. Even people that don't
There we go.
program, they want to see a brilliant mind. The details that they're not, even if they don't understand all the details, they want to have an inkling of the genius there. That's just one way I'm saying, like, that you want to reveal the genius, the complexity of that world in interesting ways, and to make a Hollywood almost parody caricature of it, it just destroys the spirit of the thing. So one, the Operation FBI is fascinating. Just tracking down these people on the cybersecurity front is fascinating. The other is just how you run Tor, how you run this kind of organization, the trust issues of the different criminal entities involved, the anonymity, the low-hanging fruit, the being shitty at certain parts on the technical front. All of those are fascinating things, and you know that's what a movie should reveal. It should probably be a series, honestly, a Netflix series.
Yeah, like one of an FX show or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of gritty, you know.
Yeah, gritty.
Yeah.
Exactly, gritty. I mean, shows like Chernobyl from HBO made me realize, okay, you can do a good job of a difficult story, and like reveal the human side, but also reveal the technical side, and have some deep, profound understanding on that case, on the bureaucracy of a Soviet regime. In this case, you could reveal the bureaucracy, the chaos of a criminal organization, of a law enforcement organization. I mean, there's so much to like explore. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I like Chernobyl. When I rewatch it, I can't watch episode 3 though. The animal scene, the episode. They go around shooting all the dogs and all that. I gotta skip that
You're a
part.
big softie, aren't you?
I really am.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll probably cry at some point.
I love it. I love it. Listen,
Don't get me talking about that episode you made about your grandmother. Oh my God, that was rough.
just to linger on this ethical versus legal question, what do you think about people like Aaron Schwartz? I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was somebody who broke the law in the name of an ethical ideal. He downloaded and released academic publications that were behind a paywall, and He was arrested for that and then committed suicide. And a lot of people see him, certainly in the MIT community, but throughout the world, as a hero, because you look at the way knowledge, scientific knowledge, is being put behind paywalls. It does seem somehow unethical. And he basically broke the law to do the ethical thing. Now you could challenge it, maybe it is unethical, but there's a gray area, and to me at least, it is ethical. To me at least, he is a hero, because I'm familiar with the paywall created by the institutions that hold these publications. They're adding very little value. So it is basically holding hostage the work of millions of brilliant scientists for some kind of, honestly, a crappy capitalist institution. Like, they're not actually making that much money. It doesn't make any sense to me. It should all be open, public access. There's no reason it shouldn't be. All publications should be. So he stood for that ideal, and was punished harshly for it. That's the other criticism, was too harshly. And of course, deeply unfortunately, that also led to his suicide, because he was also tormented on many levels. I mean, are you familiar with him? What do you think about that line between what is legal and what is ethical?
So it's tough. It's a tough case. I mean, the outcome was tragic, obviously. Unfortunately, when you're in law enforcement, you have to. Your job is to enforce the laws. I mean, it's not if you're told that you have to do a certain case, and there is a violation of, at the time, 18 USC 1030, computer hacking.
Heal him. What are you doing?
You have to press forward with that. I mean, you have to charge. You bring the case to the U.S. Attorney's office, and whether they're going to press charges or not, you can't really pick and choose what you press and don't press forward. I never felt that, at least that flexibility, not in the FBI. I mean, maybe when you're a street cop and you pull somebody over, you can let them go with a warning.
So in the FBI, you're sitting in a room, but you're also a human being. You have compassion. Yeah. You arrested Ross, the hand on the chest. I mean, that's a human thing.
Sure.
So there's a...
But I can't be the jury for whether it was a good hack or a bad hack. It's all someone, a victim has come forward and said, we're the victim of this. And I agree with you, because the basis of the internet was to share academic thought. Yeah. I mean, that's where the internet was born.
But it's not up to you. So the role of the FBI is to enforce the law.
Correct.
We gotta kill him.
And there's a limited number of tools on our Batman belt that we can use. Not to get into all the aspects of the Trump case and Mar-a-Lago and the documents there. I mean, the FBI only has so many tools they can use, and a search warrant is the only way they could get in there. I mean, that's it. It's there's no other legal document or legal way to enter and get those documents.
What do you think about the FBI and Mar-a-Lago and the FBI taking the documents for Donald Trump?
It's a tough spot. It's a really tough spot. The FBI's gotten a lot of black eyes, recently. And I don't know if it's the same FBI that I remember when I was there.
Do you think they deserve it in part? Was it done clumsily? Their raiding of the former president's residence?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, because again, they're only limited to what they're legally allowed to do, and a search warrant is the only legal way of doing it. I have my personal and political views on certain things, and I think it might be surprising to some where those political points stand. But
you told me offline that you're a hardcore communist. That was very strange, very surprising to me.
Well, that's only you tried to bring me into the Communist Party. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to recruit you, giving you all kinds of flyers. Okay, but you said people in the FBI just following the law, but there's a chain of command and so on. What do you think about the conspiracy theories that some small number of people inside the FBI conspired to undermine the presidency of Donald Trump?
You would have asked me when I was inside and before all this happened, I would say it could never happen. I don't believe in conspiracies. You know, there's too many people involved. So somebody's going to come out with some sort of information. But I mean, from the more of the stuff that comes out, it's surprising that, you know, agents are being fired because of certain actions they're taking inside, and being dismissed because of politically motivated actions.
So do you think it's explicit or just pressure? Do you think there could exist just pressure at the higher ups that has a political leaning, and you kind of maybe don't explicitly order any kind of thing, but just kind of pressure people to lean one way or the other, and then create a culture that leans one way or the other based on political leanings?
You would really, really hope not, but I mean, that seems to be the narrative that's being written.
But when you were operating, you didn't feel that pressure?
Man, I was such at a low level. You know, I had no aspirations of being a boss. I wanted to be a case agent my entire life.
So you love the puzzle of it, the chase.
I love solving things, yeah. To be management and manage people and all that, like, no desire whatsoever.
What do you think about Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's podcast saying that the FBI warned Facebook about potential foreign interference?
You there, warrior.
And then
You've the look of a man who settles for digging in the dust when he could be moving mountains. You'll find more glory in battle than chasing after a pittance of bounty, eh?
Glory in battle? Ha! There's no glory to be had there. Not anymore. Balma Musa made a cripple of Galgastan. She only has the one leg left, and that already in the grave.
Little profit to be had from laying siege to Karitanai, then.
Aye, that's the truth of it. Well, still profit in claiming heads like yours, though.
That fool's gone. Alright, bitch, start healing.
Facebook inferred from that they're talking about Hunter Biden laptop story and thereby censored it. What do you think about that whole story?
Again, you asked me when I was in the FBI, I wouldn't believed it. From being on the inside, I wouldn't believe these things. But there's a certain narrative being written that is surprising to me, that the FBI is involved in these stories.
So, but the interesting thing there is the FBI is saying that they didn't really make that implication. They're saying that there's interference activity happening.
Yeah.
Just watch out. And it's a weird relationship between the FBI and Facebook. You could see from the best possible interpretation that the FBI just wants Facebook to be aware, because it is a powerful platform, a platform for viral spread of misinformation. So in the best possible interpretation of it, it makes sense for FBI to send some information saying, like, we're seeing some shady activity.
Absolutely.
But it seems like all of that somehow escalated to a political interpretation.
I mean, yeah, it sounded like there was a wink with it.
Right.
I don't know if Mark meant for that to be that way. You know, like, again, Are we being social engineered, or was that a true, expression that Mark had?
And I wonder if the wink is direct or it's just culture. Like, maybe certain people responsible on the Facebook side have a certain political lean, and then certain people on the FBI side have a political lean when they're interacting together. And it's like literally has nothing to do with a giant conspiracy theory, but just with a culture that has a particular political lean during a particular time in history. And so, like, maybe it could be Hunter Biden laptop one time, and then it could be whoever, Donald Trump Jr.'s laptop another time.
It's a tough job. I mean, if you're the liaison, if you're the FBI's liaison to Facebook, there's certain people that I'm sure they were offered a position at some point. It seems there's FBI agents that go. I know of a couple that's gone to Facebook. There's a really good agent that now leads up their child exploitation stuff. Another squad mate runs their internal investigations, both great investigators. So, there's good money, especially when you're an FBI agent that's capped out at a 1310 or whatever pay scale you're capped out at. It's alluring to be, maybe want to please them and be asked to join them.
Yeah. And over time that corrupts. I think there has to be an introspection in tech companies about the culture that they develop, about the political ideology, the bubble. It's interesting to see that bubble. Like I've asked myself a lot of questions. I've interviewed the Pfizer CEO, what seems now a long time ago, and I've gotten a lot of criticism, positive comments, but also criticism from that conversation. And I did a lot of soul searching about the kind of bubbles we have in this world. It makes me wonder.
Oh shit!
Pharmaceutical companies.
That's not good.
They all believe they're doing good, and I wonder, because the ideal they have is to create drugs that help people and do so at scale. And it's hard to know at which point that can be corrupted, and it's hard to know when it was corrupted and if it was corrupted and where, which drugs and which companies and so on.
Oh no.
And I don't know that complicated. It seems like inside a bubble you can convince
He's really
yourself that
close
anything is
to
good.
being gone.
People inside the Third Reich
I
regime
didn't expect that.
were able to convince themselves, I'm sure many, just Bloodlands is another book I've been recently reading about it. And the ability of humans to convince they're doing good when they're clearly murdering and torturing people in front of their eyes is fascinating. They're able to convince themselves they're doing good. It's crazy. Like there's not even an inkling of doubt. I don't know what to make of that. So it has taught me to be a little bit more careful when I enter into different bubbles, to be skeptical about what's taken as an assumption of truth. Like you always have to be skeptical about like what's assumed as true. Is it possible it's not true? If you're talking about America, it's assumed that in certain places that surveillance is good. Well, let's question that assumption. And it inspired me to question my own assumptions that I hold as true constantly. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
But you don't grow. I mean, do you want to be just static and not grow? You have to question yourself on some of these things if you want to grow as a person.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the tough things, actually, of being a public personality when you speak publicly is you get attacked all along the way as you're growing. And I'm, in part, a big softie as well, if I may say. And those hurt. It hurts.
Do you pay attention to it?
Yeah. It's very hard. Like, I have two choices. One, you can shut yourself off from the world and ignore it. I never found that compelling, this kind of idea of, like, haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
Like, this idea that anyone with a big platform or anyone's ever done anything was always gotten hate. Yeah, okay, maybe. but like
feel like you can
I
handle
still want to
that
be
too.
vulnerable, wear my heart on my sleeve, really show myself, like open myself to the world, really listen to people. And that means every once in a while somebody will say something that touches me in a way that's like, what if they're right?
Do you let that hate influence you? I mean, can you be bullied into a different opinion than you think you really are
No.
just because of that hate?
No, I believe not, but it hurts
Yeah.
in a way that's hard to explain. Like, yeah, it gets to like, it shakes your faith in humanity, actually, is probably why it hurts. Like, people that call me a Putin apologist or a Zelensky apologist, which I'm currently getting almost an equal amount of, but it hurts. It hurts
There we go.
because it hurts because
That's close.
it damages slightly my faith in humanity to be able to see the love that connects us, and then to see that I'm trying to find that, and that's I'm doing my best in the limited capabilities I have to find that. And so to call me something like a bad actor, essentially, from whatever perspective, it just makes me realize, well, people don't have empathy and compassion for each other. It makes me question that for a brief moment, and that's like a crack, and it hurts.
How many people do this to your face?
Very few,
Yeah, it's online e-muscles, man. They're just
but
flexing
I
their
have to be
e-muscles.
honest, that it happens
Yeah.
because I've hung around with Rogan enough. When your platform grows, there's people that will come up to Joe and say stuff to his face that they forget. They still they forget he's actually a real human being.
Yeah.
They'll make accusations about him.
So does that
Text
cause
message.
him to wall himself off more?
No, he's pretty gangster on that. But yeah, it still hurts if you're human. If you really feel others, I think that's also the difference with Joe and me. He has a family that he deeply loves, and that's an escape from the world for him. There's a loneliness in me that's I'm always longing to connect with people and with like regular people, and like just to learn their stories and so on. And so if you open yourself up that way, the things they tell you can really hurt in every way. Like just me going to Ukraine, just seeing so much loss and death. Some of it is like unforgettably haunting. Not in some kind of political way, activist way, or who's right, who's wrong way, but just like, man, like so much pain. You see it, it just stays with you.
When you see a human being bad to another human, you can't get rid of that in your head. You can't
Yeah.
imagine that we can treat each other like that. That's the hard part, I think. I mean, that for me it is. When I saw parents, like when I did the child exploitation stuff, when they rented their children out, they literally rented infant children out to others for sexual gratification. Like, I don't know how a human being could do that to another human being. And that sounds like the kind of thing you're going through. I mean, I went through a huge funk when I did those cases afterwards. I should have talked to somebody, but in the FBI, you have to keep that machismo up or they're going to take your gun away from you.
Well, I think that's examples of evil. That's like the worst of human nature. But just because I have
War is just as bad. I mean,
somehow war, it's somehow understandable given all the very intense propaganda that's happening. So you can understand that there is love in the heart of the soldiers on each side, given the information they're given. There's a lot of people on the Russian side believe they're saving these Ukrainian cities from Nazi occupation. Now, there is stories, there is a lot of evidence of people for fun murdering civilians. Now that is closer to the things you've experienced, of like evil, of evil embodied. And I haven't interacted with that directly, with people who, for fun, murdered civilians.
but you know it's there in the world. I mean,
Yes.
You're not naive to it.
Yes, but if you experience that directly, if somebody shot somebody for fun in front of me, that would probably break me. Yeah. Like seeing it yourself,
shit.
knowing
That's
that
where
it
he gets his
exists
massive
is
attack
different
from.
than
Oh, no.
seeing it yourself. Now I've
He's dead this
interacted
time.
with the victims of that, and they tell me stories, and you see their homes destroyed for no good military reason. It's civilians with civilian homes being destroyed. That really lingers with you. It's yeah, the people that are capable of that.
That goes with the propaganda. I mean, if you want to build a story, you have to, you have to have on the other side, the homes are going to be destroyed. The non-military targets are going to be destroyed.
To put it in perspective, I'm not sure a lot of people understand the deep human side or even the military strategy side of this war. There's a lot of experts outside of the situation that are commenting on it with certainty.
Oh,
And
there we
that
go.
kind of hurts me because I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty. There's so much propaganda, it's very difficult to know what is true. Yeah, so my whole hope was to travel to Ukraine, to travel to Russia, to talk to soldiers, to talk to leaders, to talk to real people that have lost homes, that have lost family members, that who this war has divided, who this war changed completely how they see the world. Whether they have love or hate in their heart, to understand their stories. I've learned a lot on the human side of things by having talked to a lot of people there. But it has been on the Ukrainian side for me currently. Traveling to the Russian side is more difficult. Let me ask you about your now friend. Can we go as far as to say his friend in Sabu, Hector Masagur? What's the what's the story? What's your long story with him?
Wait,
Can you tell me about what is
Oh,
Lawsec?
he revives.
Who is Sabu? And who's Anonymous? What is Anonymous? Where's the right place to start that story?
Probably Anonymous. Anonymous it still is, I guess, a decentralized organization. They call themselves headless, but once you look into them a little ways, they're not really headless. The power struggle comes with whoever has a hacking ability. That might be you're a good hacker, or you have a giant botnet used for DDoS. So you're going to wield more power if you can control where it goes. Anonymous started doing their hacktivism stuff in 2010 or so. The word hack was in the media all the time then. And then right around then, there was a federal contractor named HB Gary Federal. Their CEO is Aaron Barr. And Aaron Barr said he was going to come out and de-anonymize Anonymous. He's going to come out and talk at Black Hat or DEF CON or one of those and say, who they are. He figured it out, based on, when people were online, when people were in IRC, when tweets came out. There was no scientific proof behind it or anything. So he's just going to falsely name people that were in Anonymous. So Anonymous went on the attack. They went and hacked in HB Gary Federal, and they turned his life upside down. They took over his Twitter account and all that stuff pretty quickly.
So I have very mixed feelings about all of this.
Okay.
I get, part of me admires the positive side of the hacktivism.
Okay.
Is there no room for admiration there? Of the fuck you to the man?
Not at the time. Again, it was a violation. 18 USC 1030. So it was my job. It's what so at the time, no. In retrospect, sure. Yeah.
But what was the philosophy of the hacktivism? Was it the philosophically, were they at least expressing it for the good of humanity, or no?
They outwardly said that they were going to go after people that they thought were corrupt. So they were judge and jury on corruption. They were going to go after it. Once you get inside and realize what they were doing, they were going after people that they had an opportunity to go after. So maybe someone had a 0 day, and then they searched for servers running that 0 day, and then from there, let's find a target.
I really wish I could control that
one
character.
time they went after a toilet paper company. I still don't understand what that toilet paper company did, but it was an opportunity to make a splash.
Is there some of it for the joke, for the lulz?
It developed into that. So I think the hacktivism and the anonymous stuff wasn't so much for the lulz. But from that HB Gary Federal hack, then there were 6 guys that worked well together, and they formed a crew, a hacking crew, and they kind of split off into their own private channels. And that was lulsec, or laughing at your security, was their motto.
So that's LULZSEC, lulzsec.
Of course it is.
Lulz. Sec. And who founded that organization?
So Kayla and Sabu were the hackers of the group, and so they really did all the work on HB Gary. So
And these are code names.
yeah, it's their online names. They're nicks, and so you know they that's all they knew each other as. You know, they talked as those names, and they worked well together, and so they formed a hacking crew, and that's when they started the. At first, they didn't name it this, but it was the 50 Days of Lulz, where they would just release major breaches, and it stirred up the media. I mean, it put hacking in the media every day. They had 400 or 500,000 Twitter followers, you know, and it was kind of interesting. But then they started swinging at the Beehive, and they took out some FBI affiliated sites, and then they started Fuck FBI Fridays. Where every Friday they would release something, and we waited it with bated breath. I mean, they had us hook, line, and sinker, pissed. We were waiting to see what was going to be dropped every Friday. It's a little embarrassing looking back on it now.
And this is in the early 2010s.
Yeah, this was 2010, 2011, around there.
Can we actually linger on Anonymous? What do you still understand? What the heck is Anonymous?
It's just a place where you hang out. I mean, it started on 4chan, went to 8chan, and it's really just anyone. You could be an anonymous right now if you wanted to. Just you're in there hanging out in the channel. Now, you're probably not going to get much cred until you work your way up and prove who you are, or someone vouches for you. But anybody can be an anonymous. And you can leave anonymous.
What's the leadership of Anonymous? Do you have a sense that there is a leadership?
There's a power play. Now, there's not someone that, you know, that says this is what we're doing, all we're doing.
I love the philosophical and the technical aspect of all of this, but I think there is a slippery slope to where for the lulz you can actually really hurt people. That's the terrifying thing. When you attach, I'm actually really terrified of the power of the lull.
Yeah.
The fun thing somehow becomes a slippery slope. I haven't quite understood the dynamics of that, but even in myself, if you just have fun with a thing, you lose track of the ethical grounding of the thing. And so, like, it feels like hacking for fun could just turn it, like, literally lead to nuclear war. Like, literally destabilize.
Yeah, like a
nations.
yada, yada, yada nuclear war. I could see it, yeah.
And so I've been more careful with the lull. I've been more careful about that. And I wonder about it because in internet speak, somehow ethics can be put aside through the slippery slope of language. I don't know. Everything becomes a joke. If everything is a joke, then everything is allowed, and everything is allowed, then you don't have a sense of what is right and wrong. You lose sense of what is right and wrong.
You still have victims. I mean, you're laughing at someone. Someone's the butt of this joke. You know, whether it's major corporations or the individuals. I mean, some of the stuff they did was just, you know, releasing people's PII, their personal identifying information and stuff like that. I mean, is it a big deal? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But, you know, if you could choose to not have your information put out there, probably wouldn't.
Do you have a sense of what Anonymous is today? Has it ever been one stable organization, or is it a collection of hackers that kind of emerge for particular tasks, for particular like hacktivism tasks and that kind of stuff?
It's a collection of people that has some hackers in it. There's not a lot of big hackers in it. I mean, there's some that'll come bounce in and bounce out. Even back then, there's probably just as many reporters in it, people in the media in it than hackers at the time, just trying to get the inside scoop on things. You know, some giving the inside scoop. You know, we arrested a reporter that gave over the username and password to his newspaper, and you know, just so he could break the story. He trusted him.
Speaking of trust, reporters, boy, there's good ones. There's good ones. There are. But boy, do I have a complicated relationship with them.
How many stories about you are completely true?
Pull back! These ones are keep for later.
I hate how you don't actually kill them, and then it sparks. Like I noticed in Final Fantasy Tactics, I feel like they do that.
What? Running away? After all your talk of glory? Bristle-bearded boar?
Bull.
That mouth ne'er opens, but a mealy nugget spills forth. I tarry longer just for that. But next time, fair lass, next time!
I wonder if all these characters are gonna come back. I don't remember what all the objective bonuses were. Oh shit, they all leveled up. We finally passed level cap. Oh, he got a new skill. Let's take a look, see. That part kind of fucking sucks. Create a shadow of the caster with Rampart Aura. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, is it a combo skill? Oh shit, that's a... Phalanx is pretty fucking good. That's 75 MP. Fuck that. That's a lot. We're not there yet.
Good day.
Good day. My money. Let's just sell all the extra bullshit. Dread Knight's Mark. Terror, Berserker. We got some of these here. I don't know what this is. Oh, Vard. Like a Dread Knight would be pretty sweet. Take a look at these real quick because I actually don't understand the job system. Let's do
Hello every folks and good morning. Welcome to a early game build and class guide, hopefully covering all of the information that you need to know to start effectively building your units in different ways. So Without any further ado, let's get started. First and most importantly, how do you identify a good unit? Because before we even give somebody a job, we need to know what they're actually even good at. So let's cover what the stats do real quick. So let's go over here. So first of all, we see that we're a bit too broke to actually hire anyone, so we go ahead and inherit a little bit of money from the war fund, and let's go ahead and hire somebody. So first things first, when you go over the screen here, what you have to know is that any unit will essentially be gifted in certain ways. Some can be good at certain stats, some will be very good at certain things, and some will just be outright awful at certain things. So like for example right here, we see that this lady's evasion is appalling. She refuses to dodge anything. But generally speaking, the way it comes down is this. If you want to have a character that is very good at hitting things physically, most of the time, strength is going to be the biggest number that you want to see up here. Dexterity is the second damage-dealing number. Essentially, both of these will be combined, depending on what weapon's being used, what skill is being used. By and large, both strength and dexterity will contribute to your physical offense. Vitality, on the other hand, is your physical defense, and it also combines with strength. So this affects both of these things. Agility, on the other hand, is your accuracy. This can vary in a lot of different ways, but generally speaking, this is not a particularly important one, since most of your attacks will already have pretty high accuracy, but there's certain skills that will check agility. Avoidance, on the other hand, is your ability to dodge things, and while a low score isn't the end of the world because everyone's already fairly accurate, if you see somebody that's very good at avoidance, they might potentially be an absolute game changer in the right circumstances, so just something to consider. Intelligence is your primary magic damage dealing stat. Mind is the stat that primarily affects your odds of landing debuffs, and bear in mind, these are both going to be for your weapon debuffs, your skill debuffs, just any kind of debuffs whatsoever. Whether they're important or not, mind is going to be the main one that determines this, and then resistance is going to be your primary magic resistance, as you'd kind of expect. Okay, so let's say we're looking at any unit. I would say right off the bat, probably don't bother hiring them from the store. You can just hire them in the middle of a fight. But when you're looking at these different stats, like you can see this guy has extremely high agility compared to his other stats. It's noticeably higher, and he's got some pretty good intelligence too. So he might be, he might be good as a caster in that case. This guy's got very high mind and resistance, therefore he might potentially be very good at being a debuff wizard. Whereas we see this guy has very high strength and vitality and dexterity. He actually rolled 4 high stats in this case. So this guy would make for an excellent frontliner, because frontliners, generally speaking, are weak to magic, so having high resistance, while also having 3 solid good physical stats here, he'd be a pretty good winner as far as that goes. Now, again, you're not looking for specific numbers. You don't want to sit here re-rolling for maximum amounts all day or whatever else, but just so you know, that's what they do. If you see a number that is drastically higher than everything else, then there you go, that's what they're talented at. Okay, let's get into what these classes actually do. So you have 12 classes that are available right from the get-go, again, here in the early game, that pretty much everybody can use. So I'll explain what they do and where to get them. There's actually a rule in this game that the first time that you run into a class, and if you kill that class, you'll always get 3 of their class mark as long as they drop a bag. So for example, everyone starts off the game with 3 knight class marks because the first boss is a knight. Pretty much immediately after, over here in the Archaeopolis of Rhyme, the second class that you end up unlocking is going to be the Beast Tamer, and this guy is just sitting there with his best friend the dragon there, and he'll end up dropping 3 marks for you as well. The Dragoon, on the other hand, is available typically around this area. Usually immediately as you start Chapter 2, you will end up running into a Dragoon within a couple of fights, and again, if you kill them, you get their class marks. Additionally, if we're curious where we managed to get a Swordmaster from, if you were to go into the Farampa Wildwood over here and follow the map all the way to the right, you will find several maps that will have Swordmasters. You can either recruit them or you can kill them for their class marks. The class marks are less common of a drop over there because they're not a story encounter, but you know, if you want a Swordmaster, just go in there and hire one. And then next up is the Terror Knight. which that one you get pretty much immediately at the start of Chapter 2. Both Chapter 2 fights, again, at the start, like in Law, it's the very first fight that has a Terror Knight that will drop them. In Chaos, it's going to be the fight with Zapan that will have a Terror Knight right there. Both of them are going to charge directly at you. There's a pretty decent chance you're probably going to get it by accident. But let's start covering what you can actually do with these classes, as well as some good early game builds for you to work with. So by and large, I would say probably my favorite early game warrior build right here is essentially just going to be the Poison Claw. This is a build that is so good that when the One Vision mod happened, it just became the standard for claw weapons. So let me explain a little bit about what the warrior does. So the warrior is your weapons specialist. They can equip more weapons than everybody else, but other than that, it's really just all about hitting things for them. So you can boost their health, you can boost their MP, you can make them pincer, which means that they'll do a follow-up if any unit ends its turn with their back to them that you've already attacked. They've got Siege, which allows them to sacrifice one movement in order to ignore rampant auras. They've got the usual resists, and they can have two different ways to guarantee that their hits will land. So these are usable depending on what you really want. So Vigorous Attack is going to make everybody around them have a 100% chance to hit, which additionally comes with the added effect that anything like this right here, where if you have any weapon that says it has an on-hit effect, will be guaranteed. If you ever see 100%, this also means that this will be guaranteed.
Right.
So depending on how you want to look at it, Vigorous Attack allows you to pretty much always have a chance to poison with these claws, whereas Mighty Impact will guarantee a critical hit and allow you to, once again, guarantee that poison, but you can choose when it happens. So it's up to you whether you want to just kind of adapt on the fly or guarantee that that something will happen. Both choices are there. But when it comes to this build, poison will scale based off of health, so this is just a solid build. What we're going for here is we're going for the Bronze Helm for that strength and vitality. Going for the chainmail for, once again, the strength and vitality, the gauntlets for the strength and vitality, and once again, chain leggings for the strength and vitality. Over here, we also got the warrior ring, which in this particular case is used for what I like to refer to as penetration. Basically, attack score is going to improve your performance versus armor. So in this case, a claw is considered a heavier weapon, and generally speaking, this will improve that penetration a little bit. It barely weighs anything. So this is going to have an easier time punching past some mid and heavyweight units. So overall, we're looking at a build here that is able to hit hard, it's able to leave that unit poisoned, and in many cases, all they need is one Mighty Strike on somebody, and they can simply go walk away and deal with somebody else. They give them one big hit, poison finishes them off, and they can go off to do other things. Additionally, they've got Vigorous Attack because there's a lot of weapons at this point that will have those on-hit effects, which means that they are a good support as well. So I like going for something like this because, again, Mighty Impact, you take a hit, they poison, you set them up for a pincer attack, and then Vigorous happens to go on there as well. Or if we're going about it the other way, let's say Vigorous triggers, they're able to guarantee a poison on something. They set up for a pincer, but they also activate their Mighty Impact, which means that you attack with somebody else, and then they will pincer in a second poison effect as well. They're just very, very good at spreading around damage. Okay, next warrior build. This one's a fan favorite for a lot of folks here, and that's just the standard hit the dude with a big weapon. So at this point, this Wayhander +1, pretty solid weapon, will have that on-hit breach effect. Can again combine with Mighty Impact. In their case, they're just basically running ahead and hitting stuff, and occasionally setting themselves behind other units in order to set up a pincer. A fun little tip on this, by the way, they don't always have to be sitting behind the other unit. Simply speaking, if you see that somebody has a counterattack, you can simply attack them from the other side, and they will be able to activate that pincer because the unit has to turn in order to counter. So this one's fairly obvious and straightforward. Big dude, hit thing with big weapon, and it will ruin their defense because of this on-hit breach effect. Alright, simple enough. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so next we have the Archer, the second basic class that you get right off the start of the game, and these are effectively a ranged variant of that warrior there. They will be able to use bows, they'll be able to use crossbows, as well as daggers for self-defense, and generally speaking are going to be a ranged support type unit. Primarily, you want to keep these guys out of range, but there are a couple different builds that are pretty fun to do with them. So first, we go with the standard, essentially just going for very long range here. Now, what you want to do is ideally either stack Vitality or stack Dexterity. If you want to improve their overall offense, you can actually leave them with the basic leather armor, able to have a better Dexterity bonus, leather sleeves, leather leggings, or, as it's more commonly called, just sticking them with leathers. But either way, you can go ahead and give them all these different Dexterity bonuses. This unit will, by and large, be staying out of range, so you don't really have to worry about their armor being very good at protecting them, seeing as this bow comes with 8 range. Just so you know, you can fire beyond this bow's range. The trajectory marker will always tell you where the arrow will land, so you can usually fire 1 or 2 tiles beyond that, and if you go higher, you can easily double your range or more. Alright, so as far as their skills go, they have dramatically less than the warrior here, but if you're going for a standard build, you really just need bows or crossbows on there. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to actually swap out between these depending on the map that you're fighting. So for example, if you're fighting uphill, you want to be using crossbows, but if you're fighting downhill or on an even plane, you usually want to be using bows to give you more lines to fire from. With their different skills, you've got back attack, which will basically just improve their accuracy passively. This one is not amazing. It's just kind of another thing to have on their list if you want. Really, it just boosts accuracy. That being said, this one will boost accuracy pretty regularly, whereas something like Eagle Eye right here will guarantee the hit, as well as any secondary effects, while being less likely to trigger. And then at the same time, like before, we have the Tremendous Shot here to guarantee the hit. So same rules as the Warrior there. If you have a weapon that's upgraded and has an on-hit effect, they will be able to guarantee that effect, which is again available from the store right from the get-go. Go over these craftables right here. One thing I would recommend early on is to go pick up some short bow plus ones. They're cheap and easy to craft, and will also allow them to guarantee stun when they hit. Now, with the different bows they have available, like for example, the short bow will do less overall damage, but being able to simply point at somebody and say, hey, you're going to lose your turn 50% of the time now is pretty handy. So, as far as these builds go, there's really two that I see as the main ones. So this would be your obvious long-range sniper sword. Just build for dexterity. Just pick armor that gives them dexterity bonuses, a long-range bow, and any kind of ring that will give them a bonus. So typically Warrior Ring is pretty good at this point, though Ring of the Horde and Ring of Dexterity will certainly be helpful for them as you travel on through Chapter 2 and 3. Very basic. You just pick out weak targets and go ahead and go for them. This is especially useful when combined with things like that Breach effect from that Warrior earlier. Basically, anytime that there's a unit that is weak, has low defense, or has had its defense damaged in some way, they will be able to do tremendously more damage. The longbow in particular gives them a lot of extra damage under the right circumstances. So while their initial damage may seem weak, using them in the right way will cause their numbers to go up pretty much exponentially. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I have seen a hit go from 10 damage all the way up to over 1,000, depending on how many debuffs were applied to the target. All right. So that's the long-range archer, but the short-range archer is something that's a little bit more tricky. So this is not really something that I'd necessarily recommend for all newcomers, but if you're feeling a little bit more confident, this might be something for you to play around with. So the purpose of this one is what I like to call the skirmisher. Essentially, we're talking a case where they keep the dagger for two purposes. One is a chance to parry, but it's fairly low. The other is for the dagger skill, which once they get this up a little bit, their access to finishers will be pretty solid. See, the dagger will essentially do more damage than either of these bows, and especially if you happen to have, like, let's say, an archer with wind, they have that first dagger finisher. This gives them an opening to exploit any earth units with a high damage, high scaling finisher. So it might be something to consider. But generally speaking, for now, we're just gonna go ahead and say that this dagger is here for defensive purposes, and that this short bow is good for landing a debuff on somebody. So stun is something that a wizard would have to take a chance on, whereas the archer can simply say, okay, you are stunned now. So combining Tremendous Shot or Eagle Eye, best will always land. Okay, moving on. All right, next up we have the wizard. Now these will come in essentially two flavors. So you've got your offensive wizards and you've got your debuff wizards. Realistically speaking, there's really no reason that you can't just be running one or the other. I know personally, I have to say, just putting Poison Cloud on a wizard with concentration by itself was enough of a powerhouse to actually last all the way throughout the entire game. Since again, as we discussed earlier, poison scales. So this is just a solid spell to always have available. When boosted with concentration, you're typically seeing anywhere from about 30 to 100% hit odds against most targets, which will mean that they will be able to melt away 10% of something's health 3 times per turn. So this is especially good considering it hits in an area. So realistically, for new players, I would just say Poison Cloud, concentration, put some Conserve RT on there, put some Meditate on there. There you go. Everything else is a freebie. If you want to give them a magic or a matching elemental spell, go for it. You want to give them some overhead spells? Sure, go for it. But generally speaking, poison is just going to be a solid backup for anyone to use and abuse as they will. As far as their other debuffs, Petra Burst is very good for making sure a unit definitely can't move right now, but it's a little bit less reliable on its hit odds. Charm is very good for taking a unit that's about to take a turn and turning it against the enemy, but again, lower hit odds, and there's other ways to make this happen. So, for example, by this point, there's a decent chance that you picked up an item called a Caldia, which allows you to just simply use that spell without putting a slot in there. Anyways, main thing you need to know is that yes, poison and stun are just something that will absolutely carry you through the early game. Generally, you want to spam these as much as possible, and they will end up softening targets for pretty much everybody else. As far as their builds go, they don't have a whole lot in the way of armor options at this point in the game, but you can just upgrade their stuff to let them wade into the water, and then go for either a shield or dagger for defensive purposes. A shield will make them get targeted less often because they've got a higher defense threshold, whereas a dagger might give them a chance to, for example, deflect an arrow out of the way. Now, it depends on which defense you prefer, but both of those are valid options. Generally, though, as soon as you get access to a one-handed staff, you want to go ahead and stick with that, because that added spell range is pretty significant. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, next up we move on to the cleric. Again, this one is not one that you really have to worry too much in terms of their quote-unquote build here. Basically, give them a defender's ring. You give them their basic armor, upgrade it when you have a chance to. There's not really too much to swap out here. You can give them their robes and all that kind of thing.
Like
but generally speaking, you're going to see them
mage,
using these leather
like
gloves
a
and
knight
slops
mage?
straight through most of the game. They're not a particularly heavy armor class. Though I will say they do get access to the Baldur Mace a little bit earlier than many of the other characters, so that will give them a little bit of extra range earlier on. As far as the cleric goes, this is the first class that I would really recommend kind of carrying additional items. Obviously, everyone's preference on these different things will vary, but I know in my case, it was pretty good to carry fairy scale powder around. It just boosts their healing. Just know that healing doesn't really scale like other magic or physical damage. Healing is kind of its own thing, so fairy scale is going to be the main thing that will boost it overall. You additionally have other skills later, like for example Mother's Blessing, but Mother's Blessing is not exactly always reliable. It will sometimes trigger at the start of your turn. You can pick up cards to make it more common, but generally speaking, you can just put on this powder and you'll have slightly better healing right off the bat. So next, I like to carry around a few items to let them do things when, for example, they're out of MP, or I just don't want to have them wasting their MP for now. So for example, in Area Ion Plume, if you have some archers nearby, you can have your cleric boost the archer's attack power this way, just kind of boost the maximum damage that they can do. If a unit is petrified, this is a harder debuff to get rid of, so some Jaren powder on her is not a bad idea. And then fear is also something you tend to see start coming up around this point in the game, so it's also a pretty solid idea to keep a fear removal item here as well. As far as your heals go, you don't always want to go for the bigger and more important heals, but generally speaking, you want to have one that's kind of available for quick use, and you want to have one that's available for more effective. So how you want to slot these out is up to you. Generally speaking, you're going to be getting about 15 to 20 MP per round, and assuming that you have them, sitting around a little bit, you've probably got at least a little bit saved up. So for example, if you want to target one unit to heal a lot, you can spend 30 on that, or you can spend 25 to heal multiple units for a little bit less. But major heal, for example, is something that will usually be available pretty consistently, whereas for example, a basic heal will almost always be available. So it's good to kind of tier out your spells there, so that you have low-cost options, you have high-cost options when you need them for specific things. So like for example, an exorcism is something that you may always want to keep on hand somewhere in your team, whether through items or whether through spells. So I just went ahead and slotted it in here. But for example, we can keep a cheap heal on here, so that she always has something to heal with. Or we can go for a major heal over here in order to heal multiple units at once. Or we could, for example, slot in a heal too to make sure that she can heal that one unit more. It's kind of up to you. I have Boon of Swiftness on here, just so you know, if you're coming from an FFT, Boon of Swiftness is basically like haste, but it doesn't last as long, but it's also a little bit more intense. So effectively, this just allows one unit to have their next couple turns come quite a bit faster. So again, this is just a nice little pivot for the cleric to have, where, for example, if you have nobody that's healed, they can go for a little bit of offense on their side by just going and boosting the nearest attack unit. Or, for example, they can repeatedly hit stuff with their stick and make sure that they have something like Wrathful Strike over here available, allowing them to attack stuff at close range as well. So while the petrol skill is not necessary to keep on them, for clerics, I personally find that it's just a solid idea, because if something does get close, they don't have any healing to do. Sometimes removing the threat to your team is better than trying to heal away the damage that it does. So something like Wrathful Strike does work very well, considering that many of the times that you hire a cleric, they will already be classed as a divine element. Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, next we get to my personal favorite, and this is the Rune Fencer. Basically, they are, once again, another jack-of-all-trades class, but you can do a lot of very fun things with this one. So personally, I mean, my favorite, just because I like having spears, is just the standard, you know, put whatever heavy armor is available at the time, get a Volish +1 for that breach effect. Later on, this can become a Scorpion for a poison effect, and then combine it with an Instill. So they're effectively hitting twice. Their first hit does normal damage, their second Instill hit will do 25% of that initial hit, and then it will try to do its secondary chance, which is the breach in this case. So you can kind of see it as attacking 3 times from melee range. From there, generally speaking, it's a good idea to give them a wide variety of different spells. Usually the standard is going to be 1 damaging spell, 1 Instill, a heal of some variety, which, by the way, it is actually worth keeping a heavier heal on them. Because they're a hybrid, they will be attacking just as often as they'll be casting, so having more expensive spells is perfectly viable for them, because they'll usually have the MP to use them. And then Boon of Swiftness, again, for the same reason as the cleric. So depending on what you want out of them, their skills consist of having an HP boost and an MP boost as usual resists. They can recruit, they can meditate, and they can concentrate. So concentrate just increases your odds of debuffs or spells landing. They don't really have any spells that really require this. So I'm actually, truth be told, I don't even know why they have concentration, because I've never seen anything other than 100% hit odds for their spells, but alright, whatever, it's just sort of there. Now, I like running something like this. So meditate allows them to constantly be overflowing with MP. Sometimes they go for a basic attack, sometimes they go for a spell, but either way, they will functionally be able to use most of their list at all times. You know, maybe they're at range, they go for a lightning bow, maybe somebody's hurt, they go for a heal, maybe somebody's needing a little bit of a boost, so they boost them up with Boon of Swiftness. Generally speaking, this just keeps them very nimble. They're able to pivot between different things, and you can go for finishers at the same time. Going for a health boost is just a solid choice, especially if you have Denim as a Rune Fencer here. And having a recruit on there is good, because you know what, if they're always going to have MP, they're always going to be kind of wandering around the field, so to speak. There's a decent chance that they're going to be around, you know, units that are at low health. So at that point, you might as well try to make some friends. A quick little note on recruit, because I have seen it come up pretty regularly. If you have if you target a unit with recruit, if it has a red X on them, it just simply means they are not a valid target. So it will give you, for example, as you can see on this menu, like where it's showing a red X or a blue circle, it will give you the same thing over the recruit icon when you're targeting somebody to let you know if it even has a chance to actually function. You can't talk to them as if they're no. Here is that it allows you to use this Instill skill over here with a ranged weapon. So, for example, if you happen to have a unit with pretty high dexterity, this means that you can essentially get plus 25% bonus damage on a ranged attack. Allows you to pack on some heavy armor onto what is effectively a short-range charger, while still having the ability to heal. Now, while this is a pretty effective unit, it basically allows them to also switch into spells. If a unit, for example, is resistant to physical attacks, you use a spell.
Do I not have any Rune Fencers? Warrior, priest, warrior, archer. Oh, I was gonna say he is a Rune Fencer. Okay. He's a part. That's what that is. Oh, a Valkyrie. That's different. That doesn't mind his weight fucking more. Also level 13, but 97 versus 80. I don't know if it goes up that much. Yeah, not the greatest, right?
On them. If they're resistant to spells, you use your kind of rapid fire bows or the edge of a wall or something later. And we keep a. Just know their damage isn't going to be insane. I call them you know, light damage dealers for a reason. But usually there's a lot of utility you can get out of light units. So in this way, All right, so next we get to the Terror Knight, the sort of premier can opener unit. So the Terror Knight, technically speaking, is sort of a middle ground between the Knight and the Berserker. We've covered the Knight, we haven't covered the Berserker, but there's a reason for this. So the Terror Knight's main thing is inflicting fear. This is a debuff that, while not exclusive to them, might as well be. Not many units have access to it. Now, between their different skills here, they have access to two-handers, heavy axes, heavy hammers, cudgels, and crossbows. So they can do the same shield and crossbow thing if you're also having fun with all of that, but realistically, you usually want to go for one of the big meaty weapons because of the kinds of damage that they can do. So there's three builds that I would kind of recommend for the Terror Knight here, just to give you some ideas. So, for example, if once again you're like me and you like obsessing with that crossbow and shield build, generally you would just keep Lament of the Dead on there, put them into an annoying position, combine it with Rampart Aura, and then just boost their HP, and there you go. You have a nice little like passive defensive-destroying annoyance tank in that situation. So then we would just, let's say, put some crossbows on there. We go ahead and put said shooty things in here.
Oh, cool.
There we go. Now again, this is mostly just for annoyance, but let's say you want to have something a little bit more, effective and more fitting for this particular unit type. So if you want to have a bulky kind of defense tank type of situation, you want to just have them be extremely annoying while still being very extremely terrifying, then you go for something like Hammer and Shield here. Drain Heart will allow them to keep their health topped up for the most part. Sleep might not be terribly accurate, but it's something that allows them to cheaply engage at range, whereas Drain Mind might be just what you need to prevent an enemy hit from coming your way. Like, Drain Mind is less about making sure that you have MP and more about making sure that the other guy doesn't. You actually will rarely end up breaking even on this, but for example, you see somebody with a threatening finisher that you're afraid of, you go ahead and snipe them with Drain Mind real quick, and suddenly they're back to basic attacks. So just something to bear in mind there. But this is a solid little loadout here. It gives them different ways to engage at different ranges. You can also stick something like a stun on there as well. They don't really have a wide variety of spells, but this will do the job just fine. And especially if you stack them with all Baldur gear. We don't have any Baldur pants on the save file apparently, but you'll notice it's all boosting intelligence, which will boost your damage with that drain health and drain MP. If you want sleep and stun to land more often, you're looking more for mind off these different pieces of equipment. So let's see if we can. I don't believe there's any that are going to be boosting mind off of these shields. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, we're not really going to be getting any mind bonuses off any of our armors, but that's okay. You can potentially, if you happen to get a hold of a Ring of the Mind, it can make them pretty dramatically more consistent with their spells. But generally speaking, I would recommend something more like this, where you go for a heavy weapon, you go for the Fearful Impact. Concentration will also boost their debuff accuracy, by the way. You can just go ahead and slap that on there. Just so you know, Shadow Break, you don't come up with, you don't see enemy Rampart Shadows that often. I wouldn't recommend even putting Shadow Break on there at this point. Maybe something will get changed at some point, but for now, Shadow Break still isn't terribly useful. Usually, this is going to be the standard build for a Terror Knight, though. Has been since the SNES. Basically, big, meaty axe or sword or whatever else, and you can just go ahead and combine in Fearful Impact, a pincer attack, and Constitution. However, once again, just like the Warrior, if you want to absolutely make a can opener, what you want to do is go for the Zweihander. Later on, this can be switched out for the Claymore. You combine that with that Fearful Impact, and there you go. You essentially have a unit that will completely bottom out something's defense pretty much immediately. This can combine very well with archers. Essentially, you're combining that Fearful Impact and that Breach effect to guarantee that a unit is more or less marked for death. Any archers hitting them will effectively be doing well beyond any normal damage they would normally be able to do, and any other follow-ups will also simply crush them. Their offense will be functionally non-existent, so this is just a really solid can opener. It is the most reliable way for you to break down enemy defenses by far. But, there may be more complicated options down the road. Either way, definitely by far the most recommended Terror Knight build. Moving on. All right, next we get to the Berserker. So this is going to be your premier pincer attack specialist, oddly enough, but they specialize in swinging wildly all over the dang place. Interestingly enough, they actually can combine two different damage up moves at the same time. So, for example, being able to attack more often is in many cases going to be more valuable than one big meaty hit. So my personal favorite for Berserkers is going to be Dagger and Shield, because effectively Berserk increases physical damage and causes it to hit in an AoE, while Sanguine Assault increases your strength by 50% for the next attack. This effectively means that they'll be combining the fact that the Dagger has pretty good scaling damage on there, while effectively, powering through defenses for the most part. But if you're in a situation where you don't want to swing in a wide arc, you can always swap in for the shield to go for a shield bash instead and not waste your Berserk. So this is all handy by itself, but
Okay, so I should be able... So crossbows, first and foremost. Actually, causes melee weapons to hit with 100% accuracy and always frightens target. Okay, so that's... Oh, that's actually real good. Okay. HP by 10%. That extends from one time. Lament of the Dead. Frighten enemy units within 2 tiles. Success increases with rank. Wait, why can't I equip that item? Alright, so I can't equip any motherfucking thing. Okay, I can, I just don't have any. Okay, so we need to go shopping for this fool.
Good day.
That's kind of fucking annoying. So sleep, parasitic wave, an indirect dark spell that draws power from the dark spirit to grant dark touch and dark attuned. Oh, that's a cool one, actually. Nice. So all 4 of these.
Farewell.
Oh fuck! I just bought way more than I needed to. Damn it. We're gonna actually sell some of these extra spells.
Good day.
Good day. Fuck that thing. You got like.
Come again.
Okay.
You can also combine in a pincer attack. A fun note, by the way, is if you have a pincer attack and a berserk at the same time, you can't technically combine 2 berserks, 2 sanguines, 2 pincer attacks, as well as any dagger with a secondary effect on there. And you can effectively hit about 10 units at once, just having the 2 pincer against each other. Like for example, if we look at the dirk +1, we can see that it has a silence effect on there. If you're running into a situation where there's a lot of a lot of units, like let's say tanks, like tanky knights or terror knights or whatever else that are healing or stunning or what have you. You put these, you give them a dirk, right? You have a warrior with vigorous nearby. They trigger vigorous. They both trigger berserk. They both trigger sanguine. You have them stand diagonal. They just kind of like scissor in from a diagonal, and then the 2 of them attack and pincer at the same time, just shredding an entire crowd in a big meat grinder. Oh, it's downright silly, but it works. So anyway, so this one's a pretty fun one, but you really can combine them with just about anything. Technically speaking, you can go for your heavy axes and heavy hammers and things like that, and they'll do the job just fine. Like the previous thing with inflicting silence on stuff applies to any boulder weapon. But realistically speaking, it's one of these cases where you're making a choice between if you go for a heavy weapon, you will have access to a counterattack, but you will have less control over your berserk. So if berserk triggers, then you won't be able to do as much with it. Whereas on the flip side, if you want to, if you want to have more control, you go for a shield and a lighter version of the weapon. Generally speaking, with how many buffs they get, you are perfectly fine going for a lighter hammer or axe. You don't really have to worry about losing out on much offense as far as that goes. You're going to have a slightly lower, maximum damage in that case, but you're going to still be doing just fine. I have kind of overlooked claws for this one. Obviously, the previous poison claw strategy can work just fine for them as well. So if you wanted mass claw poison, that is certainly an option. But again, I know personally I prefer going for a shield and one-handed weapon here. Armor-wise, you just go for anything that boosts strength and you'll be just fine. Strength or defense will benefit them greatly. As far as items are concerned, what I would recommend is a Basin of Time, which I hope I have on this. Okay, apparently I don't have on this save file. But in their particular case, they usually want to carry around a few buff items just to kind of help them out. So an Airy Ion Plume will improve their maximum damage, which combines very well with the two other bits of offense they've got going on for them. Putting on a Fortify is just a solid idea because, again, they're going to be pretty much directly in front for the most part. And then on top of that, you're going to want to pick up a Crystallized Flame for them as well, which will allow them to resist spellcasters because they're incredibly weak to those. On top of that, you usually want to give them a heal of some sort. The reason that I'm recommending carrying more items on some characters than others is simply because they're usually going to be in a better position to do so. Like, for example, a Berserker can afford to take a turn to, for example, buff and set themselves up for a pincer attack, rather than always needing to take an action directly. So in this particular case, we're going to give them a offense buff, we're going to give them a defense buff, and then we're going to give them the ability to resist magic as well. And they can just sort of use whichever one is appropriate in their given situation. I put an Exorcism on here simply because they might be in the front row when there's a zombie that's downed, and it might be handy for them to have. So the one thing I will say as far as building Berserkers, while any of their weapons will have their own, benefits, there really is nothing that you can go wrong with, except for one, and that would be the Boulder Mace right here. Later on, this will be the Damask Mace. So the Mace is a strange weapon. I would never recommend putting this on a Berserker, but basically the Mace is a spellcasting tool that is specifically used to boost range. While it does have what is on paper a decent attack value, it doesn't seem to be an accurate attack value. So the Mace is you can think of it as more of a trick gimmick weapon than something that you directly want to use in most cases. Like, for example, earlier you saw I had one on the Terror Knight, and I didn't even recommend it. So, like, personally, I kept a Boulder Mace on a Terror Knight for having this extra spell range, which was just fun to play around with. As far as being optimal goes, it's really not exactly optimal, interestingly enough, despite being usable on that Terror Knight there, specifically for making debuffs, more available range-wise. It actually reduces mind, making them less likely to hit, which is... Anyway, so yeah, this is not a good physical weapon even in the hands of the Berserker, so it's not really recommended to put on them, just so you know. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so next up here, we are going to have the Swordmaster. So they're only going to be available from Farampa Wildwood this early in the game. They only have one weapon type that they can use, and that's the two-handed katana, and quite frankly, their build options are extremely limited. So they're more or less a one-trick pony for all intents and purposes. Usually you want to give them something like a Ring of Vitality to boost their defense as much as possible, but more or less you give them armor, you give them a weapon, and they're off to the races. They only have one weapon type. You want to pretty much always keep Preempt on there. Now, as far as their other skills go, for now, like, they will get more later, but Mighty Strike, Preempt, and Falling Blade, you might as well just always keep these ones on there. What this consists of, Preempt, if it triggers at the start of the turn, will cause them to attack if they're attacked by an enemy. If you set up Falling Blade beforehand, this is a 100% hit and crit move. This will cause them to knock the unit backwards, effectively causing them to disable the enemy unit before their actual attack, meaning that they get to attack instead of the enemy. And then Mighty Strike is just an increase of 25% to attack armor penetration. So effectively, you just keep all of these on here, trigger Falling Blade as often as possible, and just leave them in the front row casting buffs. That's really all there is to the Swordmaster here. They're not terribly complicated at this point, and realistically, this is their they're entirely a one-trick pony, but they do it well. They're entirely a duelist kind of class. They don't hold up well versus spellcasters or archers or things like that, but against melee characters, they can absolutely clown on them. So they're a very good powerhouse this early on. Their two-handed katanas are actually pretty strong in this version. I mentioned this specifically because back in their original PSP version, they were a very bad class. Anyhow, very good to keep around for a mass strengthen buff on all nearby units, as well as good for a little bit of a passive heal with Harvest Dance. Most of the time, you'll just be spending your points on Falling Blade and just watching them do all their cool kung fu nonsense. Usually, you'll just kind of see them out fighting people in the front, and that's about it. Nothing too fancy there. Moving on. All right, next up we have the Dragoon. So this is your dedicated anti-monster unit. However, they have a bit more to them. So weapon-wise, they have access to one-handed swords, two-handed swords, axes of both varieties, spears, cudgels, crossbows. Still wouldn't recommend cudgels on them. I'm not sure why they have access to them, but they've got the usual health and MP boosts. They've got access to a pincer attack. They've got Rampant Aura, Siege, as well as these down here. These are their kind of signature moves: Dragon Slayer, Dragon's Bane, Beast Slayer, Beast Bane. So usually what I'd recommend is you scout out maps beforehand, and if you see a beast unit, you simply go Beast Slayer and Beastbane, and then you keep pretty much anything else you want to on the extra slide. So these skills will only trigger if it's relevant for them to trigger. So like, for example, I like having a pincer attack on here. But for example, like if there's no beasts on the map, they will never trigger Beastbane.
Those are pretty self-explanatory. Okay, ninja is kind of what we look at.
This dude is just getting stabbed 3 times in a row. It's kind of wonderful. Anyway, so that's the overview for the Dragoon. Moving on to the next one. All right, next we have the Ninja. So this is primarily a debuff specialist, but they're able to kind of build for a lot of different options. So to start off with, I'd say the strongest early game build to give for this guy: shield, bow, and then you pick up Venom at this point. Later on down the road, you'll have access to Envenom. All right, so you basically give them any short bow. Their damage is irrelevant. They are essentially going to be throwing out debuffs. So early game, what I would recommend is going for Concentration, which will guarantee that ninja spells hit with 100% accuracy. They have Shadowbind, which is a stop spell. All right, this is going to be the main thing that they're going to be doing damage with. But it kind of breaks down like this. You give them their bow skill so that they're a little bit better with the bow. You give them their concentration here to guarantee that Shadowbind here, which normally has very low odds to hit, will always hit. Now this will stop a unit in place, effectively disabling their turn entirely. Usually it'll last 1 or 2 rounds that unit can simply do nothing, again with 100% accuracy. Then you have Benom and Bridle that are available. These will trigger like the other instill skills, just kind of activating at the start of your turn. Benom causes them to lose a turn 50% of the time. Bridle means that they can't talk, but if you stack 2 of them at the same time, they will effectively alternate every now and then. So this means that sometimes you want stun, sometimes you want bridle. If you're really only going for one thing, I would recommend Benom, but bridle is very good for shutting down casters, for example. Steel Stance will increase their defense, which means that they can functionally be invisible because nothing will target them with their higher defense. Back attack is just kind of something to have here. Like, I know the immediate temptation is to take a double attack and go 2 swords and go full Weeb Ninja mode, which is fine. It can work. If you're going to go for that, I would recommend going for something along the lines of double attack, going for the double one-handed katanas, but only ever charging in if Steel Stance activates. Because realistically, they can keep that going for 1 turn, Steel Stance activates, they run in, they take some attacks, they hopefully survive that round, and then they run the hell away because their defense in any other situation is absolutely paper thin. So basically, yes, they can keep it up, but only for a little while. Now you can get a little bit trickier with this. For example, you may want to go for something like a dagger in their offhand to give them that parry chance, or maybe you want to go for the whole sword and bow thing because you think it's the 80s and you want to look like the old ninja assassin stereotype. Either way, their purpose is basically hit and run type tactics, but just when you get access to poisoned arrows, they are an absolute godsend in terms of just being able to completely melt health. Because again, it's not very many cases where you can have guaranteed poison and effectively guaranteed poison at range. So just something to consider there. Definitely would recommend the trick arrow ninja to start off with, and then just kind of work in the if you want to go for that higher damage build type situation. Just do 2 swords, then you do Steel Stance, you do the 2-handers, or the 2 hands here. You put their skill on there, and then you make sure again to only attack once Steel Stance is actually active. Concentration is good to keep on there because once it deactivates, you can always escape while dropping a Shadowbind on your way out. So again, hit and run, that kind of stuff. Additionally, if you want to be a little bit faster with this, you can also go double knives. So double knife is pretty solid overall weight-wise. They're pretty similar this time around, but just so you know, that is an option if there's a certain knife that you prefer. All right, second to last here, we have the Beast Tamer. I mean, it's pretty much right in the name there. They tame beasts. Their purpose is to boost up beasts as well as get them on your side. Generally speaking, what I'd recommend on this guy is just going Lobber and a couple of status blowguns. Reason for this, something like a Charm Dart, especially if you have a Archer nearby with Eagle Eye, will effectively be a guaranteed charm on any nearby unit, which is absolutely hilarious. Same thing for the Mute Dart. Having them empower whatever your preferred beast or dragon or whatever is can be pretty darn handy. And generally speaking, you really only want to keep Tame and Subdue on there whenever you happen to have a thing that you're trying to hire. But then you keep the Lobber on there, and then the bulk of their damage would actually come from these shots. So shots are pretty darn solid. They're basically a set amount of damage that can increase with physical upcards, but they can function as the team's Grenadier. Now, these are not exactly cheap to use, but they are potentially game-changing in the right circumstance. So, for example, you put Boon of Swiftness on them, you take a bunch of these shots, and you have them chuck grenades like crazy when stuff is getting a little bit dire. So, overall, this is pretty solid. The damage that you get off of the finisher for the blowguns is pretty good damage as well. And usually they're bulky enough that you really don't have to worry too much about keeping them safe. So yes, have a Grenadier. They make your beast units do a bit better. There are other options as well. Like, for example, one that I particularly liked was combining the hammer over here, which apparently I don't have anymore in stock, as well as the Petrodart blowgun, which I don't have on hand at this moment. Can you actually make that yet? There's the Petrodart right here. This is one of those interesting situations where you have an unusually high bonus on something. So, for example, having a light hammer and the Petrodart blowgun with its plus 15 strength bonus out of nowhere can make for a very, very tanky Beast Tamer over here. So just kind of something to bear in mind. It's going to be far more useful than any shield that they can have. Not to mention you potentially can guarantee a petrification on something. So, all right. So last class to cover for the time being, because we're not going to cover beast units, is going to be the Varden here. A very effective early game tribrid, but what I would recommend, by and large, for newer players, go daggers, go bows, put Elcolas Winds on there, which will give air touched. Put this guy nearby your archers so that he can buff their arrows with this air touched ability, basically increasing their damage by 25%. And then simply wander. I mean, this guy is, it's strange to say, but he's an effective wandering unit. He's one of the few cases where his movement is so high that he can reasonably go around just getting his pick of cards, and well, his stats are dramatically higher than everybody else at this point. Like you can see, he's got 20 higher strength than our archer over here. Dex is comparable, but 20 higher vitality. His stats are absolutely jacked. So realistically, anything you do with him is going to be great. And yes, you can technically get generic Vardens as well. But just so you know, yes, generally speaking, anything you do with him will be great. But Dagger Finisher for him hits like an absolute truck. He already starts off as Wind. It's just a good synergy. Give him a Blessing Stone to be able to fly in and revive somebody at any point. You know, Healing Exorcism for the same reason. And there you go. Not really anything too fancy to worry about with this guy. Pretty much anything you have him do is going to be great. But this way, if something's weak to arrows, you plink it with arrows. Like if there's a squishy that's far away. If you have something that's close by, you go for the knife. If you have something that's earth, you delete them with Heart Crusher. And if you have somebody that's in need of sports, there you go, you have it right there. Generally speaking, I like to stack a lot of various missile abilities on this guy just to exploit elemental weaknesses. But again, you know, mileage may vary as far as what you prefer there. And if you're wondering, while you're in Farampa, you can actually get a lot of beast units as well. Some early ones that I would recommend. If you go to the top left map, there will be Zombie Octopi that you can hire, and these are just very solid in general. The AI will rarely, if ever, carry Exorcism, so they can, functionally speaking, just die and come back to life repeatedly. It's very solid. If you want to have the best support available, go for Griffins. They're available in the very first map in the forest, and all you have to do is just give them a bunch of healing items, and there you go. Just having a bunch of Blessing Stones on a Griffin means that you can bring your team to carry Exorcism, so squishy that's far away. If you have something that's close by, you go for the knife. Get generic Vardens as well. But just so you know, yes, generally speaking, anything you do with him will be great. But Dagger Finisher for him archers, so that he can buff stock, as well as the generally speaking, go for the knife. And if you're wondering, while you're in Farampa, you can actually get a lot of beast units as well. Some early ones that I would recommend. If you go to the top left map, there will be Zombie Octopi that you can hire, and these are just very solid in general. The AI will rarely, if ever, carry Exorcism, so they can, functionally speaking, just die and come back to life repeatedly. It's very solid. If you want to have the best support available, go for Griffins. They're available in the very first map in the forest, and all you have to do is just give them a bunch of healing items, and there you go. Just having a bunch of Blessing Stones on a Griffin means that you can bring your team back from the brink if stuff starts going poorly. Additionally, if you're wondering how to even unlock the forest, by the way, if you just go to the Warren Report, you go down here to the talk section, you'll see that you click on Farampa, open to hunting. Many of these stories will open different areas, but there you go. That'll give you access to a lot of these classes, and that's just located right over here. So anyway, hopefully this was a useful little kind of early game starter guide type of situation. Bear in mind that obviously there's a ton of different builds you can do with all these different characters, and really you should be trying to put together stuff that you personally find just fun and interesting. Like some prefer, sword and board knights. I find crossbow and shield to be hilarious, so that's what I prefer. But everyone's going to have their preferences. So hopefully this helped, and yeah, y'all have a good one. Take care, and let me know if I can answer any more questions.
Well, I play Dragonflight.
See, now I'm not sure.
Hey Facebook, take a video.
AMD Advantage laptops are built for best-in-class gaming with exclusive smart performance technologies and premium displays. This Lenovo Legion gaming laptop, powered by a Ryzen processor.
Hey everyone, I need to make a quick postscript correction. In my previous video, explaining debuffs and status effects, I listed Poison Cloud as a spell that can be used by Terror Knights. This was an error. Poison Cloud is a spell that is not usable by Terror Knights. My apologies. Class builds. Among the topics that have been requested that I cover, few have been mentioned as often as a guide or guides for how to build characters and classes. And in a game as big as Tactics Ogre Reborn, with as many choices as it offers you, it's easy to see why. While I'm working on setting up a series of guides for each class, I wanted to offer something up now. So let's talk about Denim, and the build I used to clear Chapter 2. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you find my videos fun, entertaining, or educational, please subscribe. The new channel goal for the year is 5,000 subs, and I've promised my first ever 24-hour live stream if we hit it before New Year's. With all the support I've been seeing, we just might get there. Thank you. So Denim. As the hero of our tale, he has a wide variety of potential builds. From warrior to knight, rune fencer, or wizard, or berserker, it's hard to go wrong, especially in the early game. But today, I wanted to advocate for Terror Knight. As one of my two favorite classes in the game, and one of the classes that has received a healthy buff in the transition to Reborn, I needed to know how Terror Knight would perform. And I'm happy to report that it is stellar. We'll start by quickly outlining what Terror Knights are, what they do, and their pros and cons, then we'll get into my build for Chapter 2. This guide will be spoiler-free, and note it is a build guide based in Chapter 2 Chaos. So keep that in mind if you're worried about spoilers, specifically for the end of the video, where I'll be discussing one roadblock I ran into using this build at the end of Chapter 2. If you don't want to be spoiled for the finale of Chapter 2 Chaos, stop watching at the timestamp that is on the screen now. Terror Knights are a class that you will unlock in Chapter 2 after the battle at Ziad Mor. The dark variant to normal knights, Terror Knights nonetheless share many traits with them. They are heavily armored warriors with high HP and physical defense, as well as solid physical and magical attack. Like knights, they specialize in battlefield control, but unlike knights, who focus on maximizing defense while utilizing healing magic, Terror Knights take more of a the best defense is a good offense stance. They use dark magic to inflict status effects like paralysis and sleep, as well as to drain the life and mana of opponents. They prefer two-handed weapons like greatswords and hammers, and their abilities focus on inflicting fear on the enemy to severely reduce their attack and defense. Note that they do also get Rampart Aura as well to further lock down surrounding units. Here's the pros and cons. For pros, we have high armor and HP, which make for tough frontliners. They have better physical and magical damage than knights, the ability to cast status magic. They can drain HP to sustain themselves, and they have single target and AoE fear abilities to ensure all nearby enemies will be disadvantaged. However, of course, like any well-balanced class, there are cons. First of which is that Terror Knights are slow. They have heavy armor and big weapons, and not really great natural RT in the first place, so with all that combined, they're going to have fewer turns. They're also not quite as tough as knights, both statistically and in terms of what abilities they have. There's no phalanx, their defense is lower, etc., and so can fall to a more concentrated assault without support. Finally, until you can start really building into their mind stat, a Terror Knight's accuracy with status magic isn't the best compared to something like a wizard, especially in that early game. So it is something to consider when trying to build them for that.
Interesting.
Now with the foundation laid, let's talk about Denim. To make this build work, I kept Denim as a warrior all through Chapter 1, utilizing two-handed swords to make sure his weapon skill would be up to snuff. This had the added benefit of increasing his physical attack and HP, both stats being very important for Terror Knights. Once I switched him, I chose to focus more on offense than defense, picking gear that boosted Denim's attack more than his defense. By the end of the chapter, he was equipped with the gear that you see here. A +1 Balder Blade, Balder Helm, Armor, and Gauntlets, and +1 Chainmail Leggings, as well as his standard Azure Necklace. The Balder gear gives bonuses to Intellect, increasing the damage and healing of Denim's Drained Heart spell, and the Forged Balder Blade has both the best physical attack for two-handed swords at the time, and the aforementioned magic boost. It also deals bonus damage to Umbra, which is a nice addition. The Azure Necklace is just an all-around good accessory for Denim, and while there's probably a more min-maxed choice for him, I do like the balance of stats, as Terror Knight really does kind of want a little bit of everything. Ideally, as I mentioned before, you want some gear that will increase mind as well, as it will increase the likelihood of applying status effects and debuffs, but there's little available at this point in the game. As far as items, I again chose to strike a balance. A Mend Leaf +2 for emergency healing makes it less likely for Denim to die under concentrated assault, and an early Magic Leaf +1 ensures that you will have mana for spellcasting or Fearful Impact once you enter the fray. A Ray and Plume is a good self-buff for early damage, and a Blessing Stone ensures that Denim can help to res any fellow frontliners who may fall. As far as spells, I chose the following. Paralytic Wave can potentially lead to big returns, as the area of effect targeting balances out your relatively low chance to hit. Also, a stunned unit who also becomes frightened is in a very sad state of affairs, losing turns and dealing low damage even when they do get to act, as well as taking increased damage from anyone and anything that decides to look at them. Sleep allows you to knock out a big target like a beast or dragon until you have the chance to deal with it, while Drain Heart can help keep Denim in the fight for longer while also dealing good damage. Finally, Instill Shadow is a must, as a free 20% damage buff that will also occasionally reduce the damage you take due to the shadow resistance it grants you. Finally, here are the skills I chose. Two-handed swords are a must, of course, for both the damage and the finishing moves. Then, Fearful Impact gives you the ability to ensure any target will be feared on command for a relatively affordable MP cost. Constitution 2 is important to make sure Denim can take enough punishment to stay up, and Lament of the Dead can be devastating as a large area of effect debuff. Once Lament triggers on the front line, Denim's damage and survivability will skyrocket, allowing you to turn the tables in almost any scenario. Note that I choose not to run Rampart Aura in this build due to the lower defense of Terror Knights compared to Knights. I prefer to have Denim hold in locations where he can't be hit from many angles, either narrow choke points like alleys or cliffs, or with an ally alongside him to cover his flanks. Due to this, Rampart Aura quickly becomes rather redundant. Speaking of other units, there are a few recommendations I'd make here as well. A Cleric for dedicated heals is a must, as it allows you to spend more time casting status-inflicting spells and attacking with Fearful Blow, and less time casting Drain Heart or using healing items. Archers, rock-throwing beasts, and other powerful ranged units are also valuable here, as enemy spellcasters are the #1 threat to any Terror Knight. So, having units who can target them from behind your lines is more than just important, I would say it is vital. In the lead up to the conflict, take the chance to buff up with items or gain some extra MP. Also, keep an eye out for any buff cards, especially auto-skill up cards, as you want Instill Shadow to trigger before you hit the front, and you want Lament of the Dead to trigger as many turns in a row as possible to lock down the enemy. Doing all of this will turn Denim into an absolute force of nature who can single-handedly weaken at least half of the enemy force and enable the rest of your party to start picking them apart. This build has been a ton of fun to use and has really suited my preference for a more aggressive style of play. Now, I did want to talk about one pitfall I ran into at the very end of Chapter 2 Chaos. If you haven't reached this point of the route yet and don't want to be spoiled, click away now. You have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You gone? Good. So, at the end of Chapter 2 Chaos, you are forced into a duel with Vice, going mano-a-mano with Denim. As a Terror Knight, I found this to be incredibly difficult. Vice, as far as I can tell, cannot be feared, neutralizing half of the point of Terror Knights. And due to my low speed and lower defenses without fear, Vice was hitting for upwards of 500 damage with his finishers and frequently got 2 turns to my 1. Even knowing you don't actually need to kill Vice, simply weaken him, this still seemed insurmountable. Rather than beating my head against the wall, I changed back to Warrior to get better RT, switched to some lighter gear to again increase my speed, and with the increased damage that Warrior is able to deal with its abilities, I was able to eke out a victory. Take this as a cautionary tale. Terror Knight Denim is great at crowd control, but may not be the best choice for single target damage or duels when he can't inflict fear. And that's my first build guide for Tactics Ogre Reborn. I hope you found it educational, or at the very least fun. I'm looking forward to doing many other such builds in the future, both for characters and just classes in general. If there are any suggestions or changes you feel I should make, please let me know. This isn't the kind of video I'm used to making, and I'm open to specific...
So then Terror Knight's kind of a rough one. Okay, so maybe changing him to a knight would be better, right? Because then you'd have the healing magic. I think I was probably just keeping fucking Warrior. Well, then if anything, what I might need to do is change Homeboy over here. Change his class. It actually doesn't even look like it would affect him much. His shit's already fucked anyways. I mean, he already has weak defense, so I really don't think it matters that much. Increase physical damage dealt and cause melee weapons to hit all units in the tiles directly in front of you. Diagonally forward from and to the side. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Pincer attack 2. Nice. That seems about right to me. I think this all makes way more sense now. Donatello. Or Donalto. I need to like figure this out. Does Donalto leave the party? Interesting. I do need like a beast tamer, I think.
Take a look around.
It's the same class as that. It's just the female version. Ugh, His intelligence is pretty trash. What do you? I guess should look up. It's been a good few years since I touched this game, and I'm liking the remaster. But now here's my issue: didn't they indirectly just eat Beastmaster usefulness? Because they got rid of random fights. Like I haven't done any battle yet where I could recruit a Griffin or Dragon, since you had to use random battles before. Their usefulness is limited the second you unlock it, but not long after you'll have access to Rampa, Wildwood, and the monsters you could wish for, and all the monsters you could wish for. The lava weapon has been made a skill, and Beastmaster received it. Haven't tried using bombs for it yet, though. Monsters as a whole are way more powerful in this version. Dragons are nigh unlikable god beasts, although their damage is lacking, but they can run around causing all sorts of status ailments while bodying the entire enemy team by themselves. Griffins and cockatrices are the flying trucks they've always been, flying around bullying squishies. Cyclops are still high. Okay, so bomb damage finally scales in Reborn. Back in luck. Bombs did fixed damage and elemental augments, but not increase the bombs. Good to hear, unless I'll stockpile some once I upgrade my units. By the way, the bombs dealing fatal damage now. In the PSP version, the bombs are option for raising stats in post-game. However, we don't know much about stat charms, and have only gotten a few sets from Chapter 2 story battles. I do wish we got whips a bit earlier. It feels weird to be a Beastmaster without a whip. You get access to whips 3 or 4 stages later, right as you're getting beasts. I guess, should you hire? It's kind of annoying that they're fucking... Hiring it from the store or recruiting from the field storing mission. They both slightly randomized. Next year, recruiting the higher tier classes. Lich, Arcs, Dragons. Will is slightly or not stronger character, but there's random factor. Assuming they're the same class, they've typically been exactly the same. The game's past iterations always worked on these principles. They're the same class. Any generic will start with default template based on variants. Same stats. Oh, maybe I can just hire one. Fuck it. He's got a shitty avoid stat, but well, that guy's got some pretty good stats. It's actually not bad at all. I like that one because he's got mostly even stats. Lawful characters gladly abide by the rules that uphold order, impartially weigh all evidence before making a decision. Rules. What the fuck's the difference? What does this do? About them. Get neutral out of the way due to the loyalty drop for a certain unique. Generic. I don't understand what the fuck that means. Oh, there's different story paths? Interesting. Well, we're gonna go neutral.
Just give the word. Right then. Well.
Fists, axes, hammers, blowguns, whips, cudgels, bows. So, probably bowgun. Do that. And then we need to get this guy fucking equipment.
Take a look around.
So that's a one-handed. Can they equip? You can equip a buckler. I guess every class can equip a buckler, so that's stupid. Kind of thinking the knuckles are going to be the best route. Okay, so now that's way more viable. Okay. Wait, what is this? Grants 100 experience points. Grants 200 experience points. Oh. Hold on a second. Those really don't do too much now, do they? Gives a slipe a permanent boost to avoid. Oh, interesting. Changes the unit's element to air. That's wild. I guess fuck it, let's just try one.
You can just make stuff up on the internet. And one of the things that, I mean, there's so many fascinating psychological, sociological elements of the internet to me. One of them is that you can say that Lex is a lizard, right? And if it's not funny, so lizard is kind of funny, what should we say? Lex has admitted to being an agent of the FBI, okay? You could just say that, right?
Right.
And then the response that the internet would be like, oh, is that true? I didn't realize that. They won't go like, provide evidence, please, right? They'll just say like, oh, that's weird. I kind of thought he might be kind of weird. And then it piles on. It's like, hey, guys. Like, here's a random dude on the internet just said a random thing. You can't just like pile up as, and then.
Yeah, Johnny 6969 is now a source that says.
And then like, the thing is, I'm a tiny guy, but when it grows, if you're like have a big platform, I feel like newspapers will pick that up. And then they'll like start to build on a story, and you never know where that story really started. Yeah. It's so cool. I mean, to me, actually, honestly, it's kind of cool that there's a viral nature of the internet that can just fabricate truth completely. I think we have to accept that new reality and try to deal with it somehow. You can't just like complain that Johnny 69 can start a random thing. But I think in the best possible world, it is the role of the journalist to be the adult in the room and put a stop to it versus look for the sexiest story so that there could be clickbait that can generate money. Journalism should be about sort of slowing things down, thinking deeply through what is true and not, and showing that to the world. I think there's a lot of hunger for that, and I think that would actually get the most clicks in the end.
I mean, it's that same pressure I think we're talking about with the FBI and with the tech companies about controllers. I mean, the editors have to please and get those clicks. I mean, they're measured by those clicks. So, you know, I'm sure the journalists, the true journalists, the good ones out there want that, but they want to stay employed too.
Can I actually ask you, really as another tangent, the Jared and others, they're doing undercover.
Yep.
In terms of the tools you have for catching cybersecurity criminals, how much of it's undercover?
Undercover is a high bar to jump over. You have to do a lot to start an undercover in the FBI. There's a lot of thresholds. So it's not your first investigative tool step. You have to identify a problem and then show that the lower steps can't get you there. But I mean, I think we had an undercover going on in the squad about all times. When one was being shut down or taken down, we were spinning up another one. So it's a good tool to have, you know, and utilize. They're a lot of work. I don't think if you run one, you'll never run another one in your life.
Oh, so it's like psychologically, there's a lot of work just technically, but also psychologically, like you have to really.
It's 24/7. You're inside that world. Like you have to know what's going on and what's happening. You know, you're taking on. You have to remember who you are because you're a criminal online. You have to go to a special school for it too.
Was that ever something compelling to you?
I went through the school, but I'm a pretty open and honest guy, and so it's tough for me to build that wall of lies. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to keep all the lies straight.
Yeah, but a guy who's good at building up a wall of lies would say that exact same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so annoying the way truth works in this world. It's like people have told me, like, because I'm trying to be honest and transparent, that's exactly what an agent would do, right? But I feel like an agent would not wear a suit and tie.
I wore a suit and tie
Two on
every
the
day.
nose.
I was a suit and tie guy.
You were?
Yeah, every day. I remember one time I wore shorts in, and the SAC came in, and this was when I was a rock star at the time in the bureau, and I had shorts in, and I said, "Sorry, ma'am, I apologize for my attire." And she goes, "You could wear bike shorts in here. I wouldn't care." I was like, "Oh shit, that sounds nice." I never wore the bike shorts, but
yeah. But see, I see a suit and tie as constraining. I think it's liberating, so it's like shows that you're taking the moment seriously.
Well, not just that, people
seriously.
wanted it. I mean, people expected when you are dressed like a perfect FBI agent. When someone knocks on their door, that's what they want to see. They want to see what Hollywood built up is what an FBI agent is. You show up like my friend Ilwan. He was dressed always in t-shirts and shorts. People aren't going to take him serious. They're not going to give him what they want.
I wonder how many places I can just show up and like say I'm from the FBI and start interrogating them, like at a bar.
Probably.
Like how?
Oh, definitely. If they've had a few drinks, you could definitely. Well, but people are going to recognize you. That's the only problem. That's another thing. You start taking out of big cases. You can't work cases anymore in the FBI. Your face gets out there.
And your name too.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let me ask you about that before we return to our friend Sabu.
Okay.
You've tracked and worked on some of the most dangerous people in this world. Have you ever feared for your life?
So I had to make a really, really shitty phone call one time. I was sitting in the bureau, and this was right after Silk Road, and Jared called me. He was back in Chicago, and he called me and said, "Hey, your name and your kid's name are on a website for an assassination. They're paying to have you guys killed." Now, these things happen on the black market. They come up, you know, and people debate whether they're real or not. But we have to take it serious. Someone's paying to have me killed. So I had to call my wife, and we have a word. And that if I said this word, we only said it one time to each other. If I said this word, this is serious. Drop what you're doing and get to the kids. And so I had to drop the word to her. And I could feel the breath come out of her because she thought her kids were in danger. I mean, at the time they were. I wasn't in a state of mind to drive myself, so an agent on the squad, a girl named Evelina, she drove me, lights and sirens, all the way to my kid's school. And we had I called the school. We were in a lockdown. Nobody should get in or out, especially someone with a gun. The first thing they did was let me in the building with a gun. So I was a little disappointed with that. My kids were, I think, kindergarten and 5th grade or somewhere around there. Maybe they're closer, second grade, I'm not sure where. But all hell broke loose. And we had to, from there, go move into a safe house. I live in New York City. NYPD surrounded my house. The FBI put cameras outside my house. You couldn't drive in my neighborhood without your license plate being read. Hey, why is this person here? Why is that person there? I got to watch my house on an iPad while I sat at my desk. But, again, I put my family through that, and it scared the shit out of them. And that's, to be honest, I think that's sort of my mother-in-law's words were, "I thought you did cybercrime." And because during Silk Road, I didn't tell my family what I was working on. I don't talk about this. Like, I want to escape that. I don't want to be there, you know? I remember that, like, so when I was in the FBI, like, driving in, I used to go in at 4:30 every morning because I like to go to the gym before I go to the desk. So I'd be at the desk at 7, so in the gym at 5, a couple hours, and then go. The best time I had was that drive in the morning where I could just be myself. I listened to a sports podcast out of DC, and we talked about sports and, you know, the Nationals and whatever it was, the Capitals. You know, it was great to not think about Silk Road for 10 minutes. So, but that was my best time. But yeah, again, so yeah, I've had that move into the safe house. I left my MP5 at home. That's the Bureau's machine gun. Showed my wife to just pull and spray. So,
but how often did you live or work and live with fear in your heart?
It was only that time. I mean, for actual physical security, then, I mean, after the anonymous stuff, I really tightened down to my cybersecurity. You know, I don't have social media. I don't have pictures of me and my kids online. I don't really, if I go to a wedding or something, I say, I don't take my picture with my kids, you know, if you're going to post it someplace or something like that. So that sort of security I have. But, you know, just like everybody, you start to relax a little bit and security breaks down because it's not convenient.
But it's also part of your job, so you're much better at, I mean, your job now and your job before, so you're probably much better at taking care of the low-hanging fruit at least.
I understand the threat, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is understanding what the threat against them is. So I'm aware of that, what possibly, and I think about it, you know, I think about things. I do remember, so you tripped a memory in my mind. I remember a lot of times, and I had a gun on my hip, I still carry a gun to this day, opening my front door and being concerned what was on the other side. Walking out of the house because I couldn't see it. I remember those 4 o'clocks heading to the car. I was literally scared.
Yeah. I mean, having seen some of the things you've seen, it makes you perhaps question how much evil there's out there in the world. How many dangerous people there are out there. Crazy people, even.
There's a lot of crazy. There's a lot of evil. Most people, I think, get into like cybercrime or just opportunistic. Not necessarily evil. They don't really know, maybe think about the victim. They just do as it's a crime of opportunity. You know, I don't label that as evil.
And one of the things about America that I'm also very happy about is that rule of law. Despite everything we talk about, it's tough to be a criminal in the United States. So, like, if you walk outside your house, you're much safer than you are in most other places in the world.
You're safer, and the system's tougher. I mean, LulzSec, 6 guys, 1 guy in the United States, 5 guys other places. Hector was facing 125 years. Those guys got slaps on the wrist and went back to college. You know, different laws, different places.
So who's Hector? Tell me the story of Hector. So this LulzSec organization was started. So Hector was before that he was in part anonymous. He was doing all kinds of hacking stuff, but then he launched LulzSec.
He's old school hacker. I mean, he learned how to hack, and I don't want to tell his story, but he learned to hack because he grew up in the Lower East Side of New York and picked up some NYPD computers that were left on the sidewalk for trash.
Yeah.
Taught himself how to.
He doesn't exactly look like a hacker. For people who don't know, he looks. I don't know exactly what he looks like, but it's not like a technical, not what you would imagine. But perhaps that's a Hollywood portrayal.
Yeah, I think you get in trouble these days saying that what a hacker looks like. I don't know if they have a traditional look. Just like I said, Hollywood has an idea of what an FBI looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think you can say that anymore.
Well, he certainly has a big personality and charisma and all that kind of stuff.
That's taboo.
I can see him selling me anything.
That's taboo. That's
convincing me of anything.
You know, the 2 different people. There's Sabu and there's Hector. Hector is a sweet guy. That he likes to have intellectual conversations, and like that's just his thing. He'd rather, you know, just sit there and have a one-on-one conversation with you. But Sabu, that's a ruthless motherfucker.
And you first met Sabu?
I was tracking Sabu. That's all I knew was Sabu. I didn't know Hector.
So when did your paths cross in terms of tracking? When did you first take on the case?
The spring of 11.
So it was through Anonymous.
Through Anonymous. Well, then really kind of LulzSec. LulzSec was a big thing, and it was pushed out to all the cyber, 56 field offices in the FBI. Most of them have cyber squads or cyber units. And so, it was being pushed out there, and it was in the news every day, but it really wasn't ours. So that we didn't have a lot of victims in our AOR area of responsibility. And so we just kind of pay attention to it. Then I got a tip that a local hacker in New York had broken into AOL. And so Olivia Olson and I, she's another agent who she's still in. She's a supervisor out in LA. She's a great agent. We went all around New York looking for this kid just to see what we can find, and ended up out in Staten Island at his grandmother's house. She didn't know where he was, obviously. Why would she? But I left my card. He gave me a call that night, started talking to me, and I said, let's just meet up tomorrow at the McDonald's across from 26 Fed. And he came in, and 3 of us sat there and talked, and gave me his stuff. He started telling me about all the felonies he was committing those days, including that break into AOL. And then he finally says, I can give you Sabu. And Sabu to us was the Kaiser Sose of hacking. He was our guy. He was the guy that was in the news that was pissing us off. So
he was part of the FBI Fridays?
Sabu was, yeah. Oh, he led it. Yeah, he was the leader of Fuck FBI Fridays. So, yeah.
What was one of the more memorable triple Fs? So how do you how and why do you go after the Beehive? That's kind of intense.
You get you on the news. It's the lulz. It's funnier to go after the big ones. And they weren't getting like real FBI. They weren't breaking into FBI mainframes or anything, but they were, affiliate sites or anything that had to do, a lot of law enforcement stuff was coming out. So, but, we looked back, and so if this kid knew that Sabu, maybe there was a chance we could use him to lure Sabu out. But we also said, well, maybe this kid knows Sabu in real life. And so we went and looked through the IPs, 10 million IPs, we find one, and it belonged to him. And so that day, Sabu, someone had doxed Sabu, and we were a little afraid he was going to be on the run. We had a surveillance team, and FBI surveillance teams are awesome. Like, you cannot even tell they're FBI agents. They are really that good. I mean, there's baby strollers and whatever you wouldn't expect an FBI agent to have.
So that's a little like the movies.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it is true, but they fit into the area. So now they're on the Lower East Side, which is, a baby stroller might not fit in there as well as, somebody just laying on the ground or something like that. They really play the character and get into it.
So now I can never trust a baby stroller.
Yeah, well, probably should.
Every baby, I'm just like stare at them suspiciously.
Especially if the mom's wearing cargo pants while she pushes it. So
yeah, so if it's like a very stereotypical mom, stereotypical baby, I'm gonna be very suspicious. I'm gonna question the baby.
That baby's wired. Be careful. We raced out there, and like our squad's not even full. There's only a few guys there, and like I said, I was a suit guy, but that day I had shorts and a t-shirt on. I had a white t-shirt on, and I only bring it up because Sabu makes fun of me to this day. So I had a bulletproof vest and a white t-shirt on, and that was it. Well, I had shorts too and all that, but raced over to there. We didn't have any equipment. We brought our boss's boss. He stopped off at NYPD, got us like a ballistic shield and a battering ram if we needed it. And then we get to Hector's house, Sabu's house, and he's on the 6th floor. And so normally, we're the cyber dork squad. We'll hop in the elevator. 6 floors is a long ways to go up in a bulletproof vest and a ballistic shield. But we had been caught in an elevator before on a search, so we didn't. Yeah. We took the stairs. We get to the top, tad winded, but knock on the door, and this big towering guy opens the door just slightly. And he sees the green vest with big yellow letters FBI, and he steps outside. Can I help you? And tries to social engineer us. But eventually we get our way inside the house. I noticed a few things that are kind of out of place. There's a laptop charger and a flashing modem. And I said, well, do you have a computer here? And he said, no, there's no computer here. So we knew the truths and then the half lies and all that sort of thing. So it took us about another 2 hours, and finally he gave up that he was Sabu. He was the guy we were looking for. And so we sat there and we kind of showed him sort of the evidence we had against him. And you know, from his words, we sat there and talked like two grown adults. And you know, I gave him the options, and he said, "Well, let's talk about working together."
So he chose to become an informant.
I don't think he chose that night, but that's where it kind of went to. So we brought him down to the FBI that night, which was a funny trip because I'm sitting in the back seat of the car with him, and I was getting calls from all over the U.S. from different FBI agents saying that we arrested the wrong guy. And I was like, I don't think so. And they're like, why do you think so? I was like, because he says it's him. And they still said, nope, the wrong guy. So I said, we'll see how it plays out.
That's so interesting because it's such a strange world. Such a strange world because it's tough to, because you still have to prove it's the same guy, right? Because the anonymity.
Yeah, I mean, we had his laptop by that, by that point.
Yeah, I know,
him saying that helped. I get him a clue in my world.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he would have fought it, I mean, that definitely would have come in as evidence that other FBI agents are saying it's not him. You have to disclose that stuff.
So you had a lot of stuff on him. What was he facing? If
he was facing 125 years.
125 years in prison.
That's if you took every charge we had against him and put him, consecutively. No one ever gets charged that, but yeah, he had. Essentially, it would have been 125 years. Fast forward to the end, he got thanked by the judge for his service after 9 months. And he walked out of the court a free man.
But that's while being an informant.
Well, so the word informant here really isn't that good. It's not fitting that technically, I guess that's what he was. But he didn't know the other people. It was all in all. He knew Nix and all that. He really gave us the insight of what was happening in the hacker world. Like I said, he was an old school hacker. He was back when hackers didn't work together with Anonymous. He was down, Cult of Dead Cow and those type guys, like way back. And he was around for that. He's like an encyclopedia of hacking. But
like his prime was in the 90s.
For terror hack, but yeah, he kind of came back when Anonymous started going after MasterCard and PayPal and all that, to the WikiLeaks stuff.
But even that little interaction, being an informant, you probably made a lot of enemies. How do you protect a guy like that?
He made enemies after it was revealed?
Yeah.
How does the FBI protect him?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Perhaps I'll talk to him one day. But is that guy afraid for his life?
I think...
It doesn't seem like it.
He has very good security for himself, cybersecurity. But, he doesn't like the negative things said about him online. I don't think anybody does. But, I think it's so many years of the internet kind of bitching at you and all that, you get callous to it's just internet bitching.
And also the hacking world moves on very quickly. He is kind of... like they have their own wars to fight now, and he's not part of those wars anymore.
There's still people out there that bitch and moan about him, but yeah, I think it's less. I think, and he has a good message out there of, he trying to keep kids from making the same mistakes he made. He tries to really preach that.
How do people get into this line of work? Is there all kinds of ways, being not your line of work, his line of work? It's just all the stories you've seen of people that are in Anonymous and LawSec and Silk Road and all the cyber criminals you've interacted with. What's the profile of a cyber criminal?
I don't think there's a profile anymore. I used to be able to say, the kid in your mom's basement or something like that, but it's not true anymore. Like it's wide. It's like I've arrested people that you wouldn't expect would be cyber criminals.
And it's in the United States, it's international, it's everything?
Oh, it's international. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the big hackers now. The big arrests for hackers in England, surprisingly. There's, you're not going to see. There's a lot of good hackers like down in Brazil, but I don't think Brazil law enforcement is as good at hunting them down. So you're not going to see the big arrests.
How much state-sponsored cyber attacks are there, do you think?
More than you can imagine. It was. I mean, what do you want to say? An attack? A successful attack or just a probing?
Probing for information, just like feeling, testing that there's where the attack vectors are, trying to collect all the possible attack vectors.
Put a Windows 7 machine on the internet forward facing and put a packet sniffer on there and look at where the traffic comes from. I mean, in 24 hours, you were going to fill up a hard drive with packets just coming at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to know. I mean, it's just constantly probing for entry points into things. You could go mad putting up honeypot.
14
draws in intrusions, try to see what
just
methodologies.
to see what's out there.
Yeah, and it doesn't go anywhere. It maybe has fake information and stuff like that. It's kind of to see what's going on and judge what's happening on the internet. Get lick your finger and test the wind of what's happening these days.
The funny thing about, because I'm at MIT, that attracted even more attention not for the lulz, but for the technical challenge. It seems like people enjoy hacking MIT. It's just the amount of traffic MIT was getting for that, in terms of just the sheer number of attacks from different places, is crazy. Yeah, just like that, putting up a machine, seeing what comes.
NASA used to be the golden ring. Now everybody got NASA. That was like the early 90s. If you could hack NASA, that was MIT is a big one.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see. Respect. Because I think in that case, it comes from a somewhat good place, because they're not getting any money from MIT. It's more for the challenge. Well, let me ask you about that, about this world of cybersecurity. How big of a threat are cyber attacks for companies and for individuals? Let's lay out, where are we in this world? What's out there?
It's the wild, wild west. And it's I mean, people want the idea of security, but it's inconvenient, so they push back on it. And there are a lot of opportunistic nation state, financially motivated hackers for the lulz. You got 3 different tiers there. And they're on the prowl. They have tools. They have really good tools that are being used against us.
And at what scale? So when you're thinking of, I don't know let's talk about companies first. So say you're talking to a mid-tier. I wonder what the most interesting business is. So Google, we can look at large tech companies, or we can look at medium-sized tech companies. And you were sitting in a room with a CTO, with a CEO, and the question is, how fucked are we? And what should we do? What's the low-hanging fruit? What are the different strategies?
I don't know if that's 50%.
Those companies should consider.
I mean, the problem is they want a push button. They want a out-of-the-box solution that I'm secure. They want to tell people they're secure, but
that's very challenging to have.
It's impossible. But if someone had it, they'd be a billionaire. They'd be beyond a billionaire. Because that's what everybody wants. So it's, you can buy all the tools you want. It's configuring them the proper way. And if anyone's trying to tell you that there's one solution that fits all, they're snake oil salesmen. And there's a lot of people in cybersecurity that are snake oil salesmen.
Yeah, and I feel like there's tools, if they're not configured correctly, they just introduce, they don't increase security significantly, and they introduce a lot of pain for the people. They decrease efficiency of the actual work you have to do. So we had, I was at Google for a time, and I think mostly I want to give props to their security efforts.
That's
but
level-based thing.
User data, so data that belongs to users, is the holy, the amount of security they have around that is incredible. So anytime I had to work with anything even resembling user data, so I never got a chance to work with actual user data, anything resembling that, first of all, you have no access to the internet. It's impossible to even come close to the access to the internet. And there's so much pain to actually interact with that data, where it was extremely inefficient. In places where I thought it didn't have to be that inefficient, the security was too much. But I have to give respect to that, because in that case, you want to err on the side of security. But that's Google.
Yeah, but
they were doing a good job of this.
the reputational harm if it got out. I mean, Google, why is Google Drive free? Because they want your data. They want you to park your data there. So, if they got hacked or leaked information, the reputational harm would be tremendous.
But, for a company that's not, it's really hard to do that, right? And the company's not as big as Google or not as tech savvy as Google, might have a lot of trouble with doing that kind of stuff. Instead of increasing security, they'll just decrease the efficiency.
Well, yeah. So there's a big difference between IT and security, and unfortunately, like these mid-sized companies, they try to stack security into their IT department. Your IT department is about business continuity. They're about trying to move business forward. They want your users to get the data they need to do their job, so the company can grow. Security is not that. They don't want you to get the data. But there's fine tuning you can do to ensure that. I mean, as simple as like having good onboarding procedures for employees. Like you come into my company, you don't need access to everything. Maybe you need access to something for one day. Turn the access on, don't leave it on. I mean, I was the victim of the OPM hack, the Office of Personnel Management, because old credentials from a third-party vendor were sitting there inactive, and the Chinese government found those credentials and were able to log in and steal all my information.
So a lot could be helped if you just control the credentials, the access control, how long they last, and people who need access to a certain thing only get access to that thing and nothing else, and then it just gets refreshed like that.
Access control, like we said, setting up people leaving the company, get rid of they don't need control. Two-factor authentication, that's a big thing. I sound like a broken record because this isn't anything new. This isn't rocket science. The problem is we're not implementing it. If we are, we're not doing it correctly because these guys are taking us.
Well, two-factor authentication is a good example of something that I just was annoyed by for the longest time because yes, it's very good, but it seems that it's pretty easy to implement horribly, to where it's like it's not convenient at all for the legitimate user to use. It should be trivial to do, to authenticate yourself twice. Should be super easy.
If it's slightly inconvenient for you, think about how inconvenient it is for a hacker and how they're just going to move on to the next person.
Yes. In theory, when implemented extremely well.
Yeah.
But I just don't think so. I think actually if it's inconvenient, it shows that system has been thought through a lot.
Well, do you know why we need two-factor authentication? People using the same password across the same site. So when one site is compromised, people just take that username and password. It's called credential stuffing and just stuff it across the internet. Right. So if 10 years ago when we told everybody, don't use the same fucking password across the internet, across multiple sites, maybe two-factor wouldn't be needed.
Yeah, so you wouldn't need two-factor if everyone did good job with passwords.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying the two-factor authentication, it should be super easy to authenticate myself with some other device really quickly. It should be frictionless.
Like you just hit okay?
Okay, and anything that belongs to me. Yeah. And it should very importantly be easy to set up what belongs to me. I don't know the full complexity of the cyber attacks these platforms are under. They're probably under insane amount of attacks.
Yeah, you've got it right there. That people have no idea, these large companies, how often they're attacked, on a per second basis. And they have to fight all that off and pick out the good traffic in there. So, yeah, there's no way I'd want to run a large tech company.
What about protecting individuals? For individuals, what's good advice to try to protect yourself from this increasingly dangerous world of cyber attacks?
Again, educate yourself that you understand that there is a threat. First, you have to realize that then you're going to step up and you're going to do stuff a little bit more. Sometimes I think I take that to a little bit extreme. I remember one time my mom called me and she was screaming that I woke up this morning and I just clicked on a link and now my phone is making weird noises. And I was like, throw your phone in a glass of water. Just put it in a glass of water right now. And I made my mom cry. It was not a pleasant thing. Yeah. So sometimes I go to a little extremes on those ones, but understanding there's a risk and making it a little more difficult to become a victim. I mean, just understanding certain things. Simple things like you know, as we add more Internet of the Things to people's houses, I mean, how many Wi-Fi networks do people have? It's normally just one, and you're bumping your phones and giving your password to people to come to visit. Set up a guest network. Set up something you can change every 30 days. Simple little things like that. You know, I hate to remind you, but change your passwords. I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record again, but just make it more difficult for others to victimize you.
And then don't use the same password everywhere.
Yes. I mean,
I still know people that do that.
I mean, Ask.fm got popped last week, 2 weeks ago, and that's 350 million username and passwords with connected Twitter accounts, Google accounts, you know, all the different social media accounts. You know, that is a treasure trove for the next 2.5, 3 years of just using those credentials everywhere. You'll learn, even if it's not the right password, you learn people's password styles. You know, bad guys are making portfolios out of people. You know, we're figuring out how people generate their passwords and kind of, you know, and then it's easier to crack their password. You know, we're making a dossier on each person. It's 350 million dossiers just in that one hack. Yahoo, there was half a billion.
So the thing a hacker would do with that is try to find all the low-hanging fruit, like have some kind of program that, evaluates the strength of the passwords, and then finds the weak ones, and that means that this person is probably the kind of person that would use the same password across multiple.
Or even just write a program and do that. Remember the Ring hack a couple of years ago? That's all it was credential stuffing. So Ring, the security system by default, had two-factor but didn't turn it on. And they also had don't try unlimited tries to log into my account. You can lock it out after 10. By default, not turned on because it's not convenient for people. You know, Ring, you know, it's like, I want people to stick these little things up and have security in their house. But, you know, cybersecurity, don't make it inconvenient. Then people won't buy our product. That's how they got hacked. They want to say that it's insecure and got hacked into. Reputational harm right there for Ring, but they didn't. It was just credential stuffing. People bought username and passwords on the black market and just wrote a bot that just went through Ring and used every one of them. Maybe 1% hit, but that's a big hit to the number of Ring users.
You know, you can use also password managers to make the changing of the passwords easier.
Insecure, to make, you can choose the difficulty, the number of special characters, the length of it, and all that. You know.
My favorite thing is on websites, yell at you for your password being too long or having too many special characters, or like, you're not allowed to have this special character or something.
You can only use these 3 special characters.
It's
you know. Do you understand how password cracking works? If you specifically tell me which special characters I can use,
I honestly just want to have a one-on-one meeting, like late at night with the engineer that programmed that, because that's like an intern. I just want to have a sit-down meeting.
Yeah, I made my parents switch banks once because the security was so poor. I was like, you can't have money here.
But then there's also like the 0-day attacks, like I mentioned before, the QNAP NAS that got hacked. Luckily, I didn't have anything private on there, but it really woke me up to like, okay, so like, you have to take everything extremely seriously.
Unfortunately for the end users, there's nothing you can do about 0-day. It's, you know, you have no control over that. I mean, the engineers that made the software don't even know about it. Now, let's talk about 1-days. So there's a patch now out there for the security. So if you're not updating your systems for these security patches, if it's just not on you, my father-in-law has such an old iPhone, you can't security patch it anymore. So, you know, and I tell him, I say, you know, this is what you're missing out on. This is what you're exposing yourself to because, you know, we talked about that powerful tool that how we found Ross Ulbrich at gmail.com. Well, bad guys are using that too. It's called, you know, it used to be called Google dorking. Now I think it's named kind of Google hacking by the community. You can go and find a vulnerability, read about the white paper, what's wrong with that software, and then you can go on the internet and find all of the computers that are running that outdated software. And there's your list. There's your target list.
Yeah.
I know the vulnerabilities that are running. Again, not making a playbook here, but you know, that's how easy it is to find your targets, and that's what the bad guys are doing.
Then the reverse is tough. It's much tougher, but it's still doable, which is like first find the target. Like if you have specific targets to you know, hack into a Twitter account, for example.
Much harder.
That's probably social engineering, right? That's probably the best way.
Probably if you wanted something specific to that. I mean, if you really want to go far, you know, If you're targeting a specific person, how hard is it to get into their office and put a little device, USB device, in line with their mouse? Who checks how their mouse is plugged in? And for $40 on the black market, you can buy a keylogger that just USB, then the mouse plugs right into it. It looks like an extension on the mouse, if you can even find it. You can buy the stuff with a mouse inside of it. And just plug it into somebody's computer, and there's a keylogger that lives in there and calls home, sends everything you want. So, and it's cheap.
Yeah, in grad school, a program that built a bunch of keyloggers. It was fascinating, a tracking mouse. Just for what I was doing as part of the research, I was doing to see if by the dynamics of how you type and how you move the mouse, you can tell who the person is.
Oh wow,
that's like it's called the active authentication, or it's basically biometrics that's not using bio. To see how identifiable that is. So it's fascinating to study that, but it's also fascinating how damn easy it is to install keyloggers. So I think is natural. What happens is you realize how many vulnerabilities there are in this world. You do that when you understand bacteria and viruses. You realize they're everywhere. In the same way with I'm talking about biological ones, and then you realize that all the vulnerabilities that are out there. One of the things I've noticed quite a lot is how many people don't log out of their computers. Just how easy physical access to systems actually is. Like in a lot of places in this world. And I'm not talking about private homes, I'm talking about companies, especially large companies. It seems quite trivial in certain places that I've been to walk in and have physical access to a system. And that's depressing to me.
It is. It just, I laugh because one of my partners at Naxo that I work at now, he worked at a big company. Like, you would know the name as soon as I told you. I'm not going to say it. But the guy who owned the company, and the company has his name on it, didn't want to ever log into a computer. Just annoyed the shit out of him. So they hired a person that stands next to his computer when he's not there. Yeah. And that's his physical security.
See, that's good. That's pretty good, actually.
So, yeah, I guess if you could afford to do that.
Yeah. At least you're taking your security seriously. I feel like there's a lot of people in that case would just not have a login.
Yeah. No, the security team there had to really work around to make that work, non-compliant with the company policy.
But that's interesting. The keylog, there's just a lot of threats.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to get in.
Yeah, so you can't sit around and worry about someone physically gaining access to your computer with keylogger and stuff like that. If you're traveling to a foreign country and you work for the FBI, then yeah, you do. You pick little, sometimes some countries you would bring a fake laptop just to see if they stole it or accessed it.
I really want, especially in this modern day, to just create a lot of clones of myself that generate Lex-sounding things and just put so much information out there. Actually dox myself all across the world.
And then you're not a target, I guess. Just put it out there. I've always said that, though. Like, we do these searches in FBI houses and stuff like that. If someone just got like a box load of like 10 terabyte drives and just encrypted them, oh my God, you know how long the FBI would spin their wheels trying to get that data off there? It'd be insane.
Oh, so just give them...
You don't even know which one you're looking for.
Yeah. That's true. So it's like me printing like a treasure map to a random location, just get people to go on goose chases. Yeah. What about operating system? What have you found? What's the most secure and what's the least secure operating system? Windows, Linux. Is there no universal?
There's no universal security. It changed. People used to think Macs were the most secure just because they just weren't out there. But now kids have had access to them. So, I know you're a Linux guy. I like Linux too. But it's tough to run a business on Linux. People want to move more towards the Microsofts and the Googles just because it's easier to communicate with other people that maybe aren't computer guys. So you have to just take what's best, what's easiest, and secure the shit out of it as much as you can, and just think about it.
What are you doing these days?
I didn't realize I was going to do that.
So we just started Naxo. So I left the government and went to a couple of consultancies, and I started working. Really, all the people I worked good in the government with, I brought them out with me. And now
you used to work for the man, and now you're the man.
Exactly. So, but now we formed a partnership, and it's a new cybersecurity firm that our launch party is actually on Thursday, so it's going to be exciting.
Do you want to give more details about the party so that somebody can hack into it?
No, I don't even tell you where it is. You can come if you want, but don't bring the hackers. So.
Well,
But Hector will be there. With
I
us,
can't
so.
believe you invited me because you also say insider threat is the biggest threat. By the way, can you explain what the insider threat is?
The biggest insider threat in my life is my children. My son's big into Minecraft and will download executables mindlessly and just run them on the network. So
you recommend against marriage and family and kids?
Nope. I think
From a security perspective.
from a security perspective, absolutely. But no, I just segmentation. We do it in all businesses for years. Started segmenting networks, different networks. I just do it at home. My kid's on his own network. It makes it a little bit easier to see what they're doing too. You can monitor traffic and then also throttle bandwidth if your Netflix isn't playing fast enough or buffers or something. So you can obviously change that a little too.
You know they're going to listen to this, right? They're going to get your tricks.
Yeah, that's true. They'll definitely will listen. But there's nothing more humbling than your family. You think you've done something big and you go on a big podcast and talk to Les Freeman and they don't fucking care.
Unless you're on TikTok or
you'll show up on a YouTube feed or something like that, and I'll be like, oh yeah,
whatever. This guy's boring.
Yeah, my son does a podcast for his school, and I still can't get him to telling. So one of Hector and I just started a podcast talking about cybersecurity. We do a podcast called Hacker in the Fed. It just came out yesterday. So first episode.
Nice.
So yeah, we got 1,300 downloads the first day.
Nice.
So we were at the top of Hacker News, which is a big website in our world.
So it's called Hacker in the Fed?
Hacker in the Fed's the name of it. So
go download and listen to Hacker in the Fed. I can't wait to see because I don't think I've seen a video of you two together, so I can't wait to see what the chemistry is like. It's not weird that you guys used to be enemies and now you're friends.
So yeah, we just did a trailer and all that, and our producer, we have a great producer, a guy named Phineas, and he kind of pulls things out of me, and I said, okay, I got one. My relationship with Hector is, we're very close friends now, and he's like, oh, I arrested one of my closest friends.
Yeah,
which is a very strange relationship.
Yeah, it's weird.
But he says that I changed his life. He was going down a very dark path, and I gave him an option that one night, and he made the right choice. He now does penetration testing. He does a lot of good work, and he's turned his life around.
Do you worry about cyber war in the 21st century?
Absolutely. If there is a global war, it'll start with cyber. If it's not already started.
Do you feel like there's a boiling, like the drums of war are beating? What's happening in Ukraine with Russia? It feels like the United States is becoming more and more involved in the conflict in that part of the world, and China is watching very closely. Is starting to get involved geopolitically and probably in terms of cyber. Do you worry about this kind of thing happening in the next decade or two, like where it really escalates? People in the 1920s were completely terrible at predicting the World War II. Do you think we're at the precipice of war potentially?
I think we could be. I would hate to just be, just fear-mongering out there. COVID's over, so the next big thing in the media is war and all that. But there's some flags going up that are very strange to me.
Is there ways to avoid this?
I hope so. I hope smarter people than I are figuring it out. I hope people are playing their parts and talking to the right people, because the war is the last thing I want.
Well, there's two things to be concerned about on the cyber side. One is the actual defense on the technical side of cyber, and the other one is the panic that might happen when something like some dramatic event happened because of cyber, some major hack that becomes public. I'm honestly more concerned about the panic, because I feel like if people don't think about this stuff, the panic can hit harder. Like if they're not conscious about the fact that we're constantly under attack, I feel like it'll come like a much harder surprise.
Yeah, I think people will be really shocked on things. So we talked about LulzSec today, and LulzSec was 2011. They had access into the water supply system of a major U.S. city. They didn't do anything with it. They were sitting on it in case someone got arrested, and they were gonna maybe just expose that it's insecure. Maybe they were gonna do something to fuck with it. I don't know, but you know that's 2011. You know, I don't think it's gotten a lot better since then.
And there's probably nation states or major organizations that are sitting secretly on hacks like
100%. 100%. They are sitting secretly waiting to expose things. I mean, I don't want to scare the shit out of people, but people have to understand the cyber threat. I mean, there are thousands of nation state hackers in some countries. I mean, we have them too. We have offensive hackers.
You know, the terrorist attacks of 9/11, there's planes that actually hit actual buildings, and it was visibly clear, and you can trace the information. With cyber attacks, say something that would result in a major explosion in New York City, how the hell do you trace that? Like, if it's well done, it's going to be extremely difficult. The problem is, there's so many problems. One of which the U.S. government, in that case, has complete freedom to blame anybody they want.
True.
And then to go start war with anybody that actually see Jew. All right, that's one cynical take on it, of course.
No, but you're going down the right path. I mean, the guys that flew planes in the buildings wanted attribution. They took credit for it. When we see the cyber attack, I doubt we're going to see attribution. Maybe the victim side, the U.S. government on this side, might come out and try to blame somebody. But, you know, like you've brought up, they could blame anybody they want. There's not really a good way of verifying that.
Can I just ask for your advice? So, in my personal case, am I being tracked? How do I know? How do I protect myself? Should I care?
You are being tracked. I wouldn't say you're being tracked by the government. You're definitely being tracked by big tech.
No, I mean me personally, Lex, an escalated level. So like you mentioned, there's an FBI file on people.
Sure.
I'd love to see what's in that file. Who did I have the argument? Oh, let me ask you, FBI.
Yeah.
How's the cafeteria food in FBI?
At the academy, it's bad.
Yeah.
What
about like
at headquarters?
Headquarters.
A little bit better because that's where the director. I mean, he eats up on the 7th floor.
So have you been like at Google? Have you been to Silicon Valley? Those cafeteria, like those.
I've been to the Google in Silicon Valley. I've been to the Google in New York.
Yeah, the food is incredible.
It is great.
So FBI is worse.
Well, when you're going through the academy, they don't let you outside of the building, so you have to eat it. And I think that's the only reason people eat it.
Okay.
It's pretty bad.
I got it. Okay. I don't know why.
But there's also a bar inside the FBI Academy. People don't know that.
Alcohol bar?
Yes, alcohol bar. Wow. And as long as you've passed your PT and going well, you're allowed to go to the bar.
Nice. It feels like if I was a hacker, I would be going after like celebrities because they're a little bit easier, like celebrities like Hollywood.
Well, Hollywood nudes were a big thing there for a long time.
But now, yeah, I guess nudes.
That's what they went after. I mean, all those guys, they socialized. They social engineered Apple to get backups, to get the recoveries for backups, and then they just pulled all their news. And I mean, whole websites were dedicated to that.
Yeah. See, I wouldn't do that kind of stuff. It's very creepy. I would go, if I was a hacker, I would go after like major, like powerful people, and like tweet something from their account, and like something that like positive, like loving, but like for the lols, that obvious that it's a troll.
God, you get busted so quick.
By
what a bad hacker.
Really? But why?
Because hackers never put things out about love.
Oh. Oh, you mean like this is clearly?
Yeah, this is clearly Lex.
What the
he
fuck?
talks about love in every podcast he does.
I would just be like, no. Oh, God damn it. Now somebody's going to do it. You'll blame me. It wasn't me. Looking back at your life, is there something you regret?
I'm only 44 years old. I'm already looking back.
Is there stuff that you regret?
AV unit.
Yeah.
It got away.
That was the one that got away.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while into my law enforcement career to learn about like the compassionate side, and it took Hector Monsegur to make me realize that criminals aren't really criminals; they're human beings. That really humanized the whole thing for me, sitting with him for 9 months. I think that's maybe why I had a lot more compassion when I arrested Ross. Probably wouldn't have been so compassionate if it was before Hector. But yeah, he changed my life and showed me that humanity side of things.
So would it be fair to say that all the criminals, or most criminals, are
because of that skill.
just people that took a wrong
That
turn at
makes
some point?
sense.
They all have the capacity for good and for evil in them.
I'd say 99% of the criminals that I've interacted with, yes. The people with the child exploitation, no, I don't have any place in my heart for them.
What advice would you give to people in college, people in high school, trying to figure out what they want to do with their life? How to have a life they can be proud of, how to have a career they can be proud of,